Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the special open council meeting for November 28th. I wonder if I could have, I want to first recognize that we are on the traditional territory of the Nanaimo First Nations. And could we have late items, please? Armstrong.
Your Worship, staff is recommending that this evening's agenda be amended as follows. Under item 8A, Council Select Committees, I will be doing a presentation. Agenda item 8B, proposed transition process for Tourism Nanaimo. We are adding a number of delegations. Given the number, they will all have a maximum speaking time of 5 minutes. They are Mr. Kevin Shaw, Mr. Dave Lawrence, Mr. Richard Payne, Mr. Dave Frost, Mr. Jean Lemieux, Mr. Cliff Wiltshire. Agenda item 10A, early approval and project scope change for Brecon boat ramp improvements, paddling duck extension, and purchase of 2 floats for 2 other parks. We're going to add a delegation, Mr. Fred Taylor. Under agenda item 10B, the outdoor ice rink hometown hockey legacy opportunity, add a delegation, Mr. John DeCombe. Under agenda item 14A, notice of motion. Your Worship, you are adding a notice of motion regarding medical marijuana dispensary. Under agenda item 15A, other business, I will be adding an agenda item reconsideration of resolution number 15316, Nanaimo Jailhouse Reduction Staff Report. Under agenda item 16A, automated solid waste collection, add a delegation, Mr. Ron Bolin. Add agenda item 16B, which is core service report and delegation as a standing item. Add delegation, Ms. June Ross.
And that's it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp?
Yes, I'd like to add a late delegation, Mr. Henry Trey, on item 8B. That's the proposed transition of Nanaimo tourism.
So he would be delegation number 7.
Yes.
Mr. Henry Traw. Thank you. Okay, that's it. Any other council? Seeing none. Motion to move the agenda as amended. Councillor Pratt. Councillor Bestwick seconding. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. So, first item, presentation of, oh my goodness. It's a little complicated. Ms. Armstrong, you're first up, I thought.
It's under other business at the end.
Okay. Mr. Harding, good evening.
An update on our energy management plan. It's something the council's asked for a while. Last one we did for you was when Bruce Joyner was just retiring in March of 2015. Scott Pamager has an update for where we've been, where we're currently at, and where we hope to go. So I'll turn it over to Scott Pamager.
I'd just like to give an update to the city's energy management program. We've been in partnership with BC Hydro since 2009 and received considerable support for this program. So I just thought I'd start with a brief overview of what is energy management. It's finding opportunities with existing and new assets to operate more efficiently. And the reason why energy management is very important is it helps us to reduce costs and carbon emissions and also lead to long-term sustainability of our assets. So the city has quite a few energy users, and there's actually 209 different buildings that consume energy at the city. We have everything from office buildings to operation facilities like our public works and parks operations, water treatment plant, those sort of facilities. Also our recreation and park facilities like our pools and arenas and our field houses, as well as fire rescue facilities and parkades as well. And lastly, we have about 8,500 street lights that light our city streets, which consume quite a bit of energy as well. The city's energy management program has targets that are based on 1% reduction in the 2008 energy consumption data. And typically we're trying to do projects with a payback of 8 years or less for our energy projects. In addition to that, we look at the life cycle and cost benefits of all our energy projects for deciding which projects to do in order that we do them. This slide here shows the 2015 energy consumption, and from the slide you can see that electricity is by far our biggest consumption at just over $2.6 million, and natural gas is about 15% or 620,000 of our total demand for energy, followed by our fuels like diesel and gasoline and heating oil as well. This slide here is our electricity energy consumption for 2015. And as you can see from the slide, our main recreation centers consume the most amount of electricity at about 25%. And street lighting is one of our utilities that also consumes about 20% of our electricity, followed by many of our other facilities like our arenas and conference center and our utility and office buildings. Similarly, this slide illustrates our natural gas. And from this slide, you can see there's a much greater amount of natural gas consumed at our main recreation facilities like Bebin and Nanaimo Aquatic Center, which are used to heat the water and the environment for the swimmers and that. The office buildings and things like fire rescue and public works, they consume considerably less natural gas than our big recreation facilities. These next two slides that I'll show are this slide represents our 1% reduction in energy for electricity. The red line is the annual reduction target of 1%, and the blue line shows how we're doing each year in regards to that 1%. Last year, we added on the water treatment plant as a significant new building with an electrical load. So typically, we would have seen the blue line drop down a bit, but with the new load, there's considerably more electricity being consumed. This slide here is similar, except it's for natural gas. Again, the red line depicts our actual 1% target in natural gas. And the blue line shows that we've consistently been well under our 1% reduction in natural gas since the program started. Leading up to reducing electrical energy and gas energy, what we're trying to do is also reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And in 2007, the city signed on to the BC Climate Action Charter, and with a target of reducing emissions by 33%. This graph here shows the green lines are the bars with our incremental reduction of trying to reach our goal, and the red lines illustrate that by 2013 we actually were below our target, which is the green lines. The BC government has also set a 2050 target, hoping to achieve about 80% below our 2007 levels. So in the next 30 plus years there, we'll try and get to even lower levels. This slide here is a a brief snapshot of the different types of energy projects that have been happening in the last 2 years, and I've just broken it down into lighting upgrades, mechanical systems, electrical systems, and building envelope type projects. And the numbers beside each year represent how many projects we've done in that year. And down near the bottom of the slide is our actual kilowatt hour savings and our natural gas or gigajoule savings, as well as our reduction in greenhouse gases. So we've been doing very well at achieving the targets that we set. Future opportunities. The city's currently looking at street lighting as one of the next large energy reduction potentials. The traffic or transportation group at the city will be presenting early in 2017 a business case to illustrate the benefits and savings potentially with moving from high-pressure sodium lights to LED technology. Another project that we've been studying is at the at the Bevan Park Recreation Facility. We've done a boiler plant study looking at the boilers the two big boilers that were installed in 1975. And the results of the study are very promising. They show that we could potentially save about 42% of our natural gas bill compared to 2015 levels, as well as reducing electricity by about 2% in that facility, with a combined savings of just over $76,000 a year, and also 40% emissions reduction for that particular site. And I forgot to say, but the study was 50% funded through FortisBC for that study, which was a benefit. Another program that the city is currently in the process of working with BC Hydro and FortisBC is the Continuous Optimization Program study. And at our major recreation facilities, Bevan, Nanaimo Aquatic Center, and Nanaimo Ice Center, these continuous optimization studies are looking at how the facility works today compared to how they were designed. And they're identifying savings through fairly simple capital projects with a payback of 2 years or less. So the first study has yielded, through the investigation phase, savings of almost $75,000 per year. And within the next few weeks, I'll get the other study complete, which should yield some additional savings. We're also looking at solar energy studies currently at 2 of our sites. Nanaimo Aquatic Center, I have a thermal and electrical solar energy study. And we also have a complementary or free study being done at our Nanaimo Ice Center, being done by Energy Solutions Vancouver Island. A submission was given to them, and we were successful in being one of the selected municipalities for this free study. So the results of those 2 studies should be done within the next month or so. Another project that relates to energy savings is at the Nanaimo Ice Center. We're hoping to implement next year cold water ice making, which is a change from using hot water in our Zambonis to using cold water. And there's a specific device that changes the characteristics of water so that this can be done. And there's potential savings of $12,000 per year per ice sheet. Since the energy management program began in 2009, we've been fortunate to receive considerable incentives from BC Hydro and some from FortisBC as well. And we can see the total number of incentives is just over $1.5 million that the city has received towards the projects and the work that's been done. And lastly, this slide is, it's got a lot of data in it, but it's basically an annual summary of the different type of energy projects and the reductions in those energy types, like electricity, gas, oil, and also greenhouse gas emissions, and also the money that we've avoided spending by implementing these projects. And over in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see that we've avoided costs of just over $2.5 million since the program started in 2009. Whoops, I'm too far. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Your Worship. This just sort of is a little bit serendipitous because you've come to talk to us about energy and you've talked about our recreation centres, etc. So later tonight on the agenda we'll have a discussion about an outdoor rink, and I was interested to see the energy consumption of the rinks that we have, and I guess you took Cliff McNabb and the Nanaimo Ice Centre and put them together. You said it's 11% of the electricity used is consumed by those. And so I'm just wondering, on a little outdoor ice sheet, what are we looking at in terms of energy consumption? Any idea?
To be honest, I'm not sure. It's quite a different environment because it's not enclosed. And
Right.
I would say it's definitely going to be using a bit more energy, but the basics of the system are very similar. And I don't know, Richard, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, what Scott mentioned, we'd have to do, it is a temporary rink, so it would be the seasonal aspect of it. We'll be using with it, depending where we put it, will have to be a generator. But again, we could do the energy consumption estimates of it. We haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
We could do that.
Well, it's just an interesting that it came up at on the same agenda. And I understand that I guess our decision tonight may be whether we want it, one, do we want it temporarily? And or two, did we want to purchase equipment so that we could have it year after year? And I guess that year after year then would take into account this question more than just a one time, one shot.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you for this presentation. I got some questions, and actually to comment on Councillor Brennan's thing, I actually got a tour today of the Parks and Rec of the Aquatic Center, well, the Nick, not the Aquatic Center yet, but the Nick and Bevan. So the facilities that they got at the Nick, the chillers are amazing. The size and the efficiency compared to what I saw at Bevan. I can't wait till we change those chillers from 1970s, if I'm not mistaken. I think, yeah. So that's a really old chiller. Seeing the two, it was just like, wow, complete difference there. Couple of questions. I'm glad that you're doing the LED project with the lights, because I roughly did the math when you said 20% went towards their 8,500 plus lights. That works out to $320,000 a year, roughly, that we spend on electricity. So then I was just like doing the math, like, if we replace these at $400 each, that's $3.4 million. That covers itself almost in 10 years' time. So that's great to see those, but just rattle those off. One question I have is, we didn't save a lot of electricity because based on the water plant that came on, and that seemed to have drawn the electricity. My question I have is, if I'm not mistaken, we have generators at Reservoir Number 1 that generate that electricity. Do we have that?
Yes, we have an energy recovery system there.
Yes, so where does that money get back dumped into this, or do we know how much money we get out of that?
We do, actually. I'll just show you on, one of my slides. I think it's about $75,000 a year that's sold back to BC Hydro for the energy recovery system at Reservoir Number 1.
Perfect. Can we then do that at the water treatment plant and recover that cost to pay for this electricity? Because the spike I guess not the spike, but the reduction that we're not seeing is because of that plant coming online. So were there options for us to put something at Jump Lake, the same gravity-fed systems that you have at the reservoir, to offset some of our energy costs? Was
Yeah,
that
they're
an option?
actually, early in the design of the water treatment plant, there was initial, very simple study done, and it identified there is some fairly small potential energy savings through an energy recovery system at the water treatment plant. But that would require some design and then future funding to implement.
Okay, great, thank you. And then one last question, if I may. CNG, where does that fit into here? I know that you talked about diesel costs. Now that a lot of our stuff are going to be coming online to CNG, where is that going? Is it going to be a new category for us?
Usually we're just compressed natural gas?
Yes.
Yeah. The liquefied natural gas that we use is generally what our facilities use. So with the CNG, I'm not too really sure how much overlap there is there. So.
Yeah, because I think that's what our garbage trucks are going to be, if I'm not mistaken. So I just wanted to know what.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, because our new garbage trucks will be running on CNG. So what was the garbage trucks running on diesel? So that was the cost I was trying to get at, to see where our savings were going to be with reducing diesel garbage trucks and going with CNG. So I'm hoping next year your category is going to include, I guess,
include
CNG as an expense.
Yeah, definitely.
Great,
can.
thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Yocum.
Thank you. Thank you for your update. Just want to touch on the energy we use in the city, whether it's city finance or we subsidize it. There's going to be energies that are going to be used, and whether it's the arena or a pool or this building or say buildings we fund, I don't think it should, like I see arenas got singled out, and I see, we can say about any of the buildings, like this building's 11%, I think I see it on the chart, of energy that the city energies. So to me, it's not about what building or jockeying who used the most energy or what and whatnot. But the point I really was pleased to see your studies is how what type of energy we have to use. So I look forward to the city's studies on solar, what you're doing up at the NIC. I think I seen on there.
Yes, Nick
And I believe it's not wrong. We're going to have to use, obviously energy is going to get used in our facilities, but it's what energy we need to. So we got to get past where we are today and get past studies and bring solar into reality, bring solar, hot water panels into reality, geothermal heating in reality. So I look forward to what got used, exactly how we use it, where we get energy. So I look forward to when we get past the studies and bring it to a reality of changing the mindset and the thinking. And I'm well aware it's going to cost money to bring in these modern power sources to a reality. So I look forward to your studies and moving to the next stage of the modern era. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Paminger, for your presentation and for your efforts in working towards energy savings and reductions. And it's really gratifying to see that you're more than meeting most of the targets that have been set. And I'm sure that trend will continue. You did give this presentation last week to the Parks, Recreation and Wellness Committee, so I have seen it, and there were some good questions that came out of that. And am I correct that this report is available to the public on our website?
Yes, this presentation?
Yes, this presentation.
We can make it available.
That would be great information, thank you. And another point that came up from that meeting last week, somebody asked a question regarding LED lights, and I predicted that Councillor Hong would have something to say about that tonight. But the information you provided, I found interesting that there is different actual levels of LED lighting, some harsher or more intense than others.
Yeah, there's different color spectrums that are available with LEDs that were typically not that available with older technologies. So it's something we'll be looking at as part of our selection process for LEDs.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I see that Councillor Kipp did not, or pardon me, I'm sorry, Councillor Hong didn't bring up his potential for turbine generation. One of the things that we're seeing more of, and we know that we have a gravity water system, and he talked about at the water treatment plant, but are you following some of these inline turbine systems that are being touted nowadays? I mean, I would think that we could put those in numerous locations around the city.
Yeah, I have followed the options and the technology for those systems. Generally, they require a fairly large flow in order to be feasible. So using the water system like Reservoir Number 1 was a very ideal project. The smaller ones are generally not so feasible, so definitely want to look at sort of the bigger possibilities with the bigger systems of our water for that.
Good, thank you very much. I don't see any further questions. Thank you very much. Motion to receive the delegation, please, for the presentation.
Thank you.
Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Bestwick. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The next item is under the Mayor's report, and that is to receive an email dated November 1st, 2016 from Ms. Rosemary Bonanno, Executive Director of the Vancouver Island Regional Library, requesting that Council appoint a representative and alternate to the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board for a one-year term, January 1st, 2017 to December 31st, 2017, and we have to notify them by December 15th. So I would propose that Councillor Brennan be appointed to the City of Nanaimo as our representative to the Vancouver Island Regional Library for a term ending December 31st, 2017, and Councillor Pratt be appointed as an alternate. Can I have someone to move that? I'll make that motion. Moved by Councillor Thorpe. Is there a second? Seconded by Councillor Kipp. Any discussion? See none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the Council Select Committees, and that is to obtain Council's approval of the Select Committees terms of reference and General Committee operating guidelines. And a presentation by Ms. Jane Armstrong.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So in this presentation, what I wanted to do was go over a little bit of background. That includes the Watson Governance Report, as well as some directions that Council gave to staff in July 2016. I want to talk a little bit about the rationale for the terms of reference and the operating guidelines, as well as sources of committee work and their reporting requirements, and then lastly, member appointment process, including roles of council members. So the Watson Report on Governance had a number of recommendations regarding committees that are based on best practices. And those were that your committee structures really do need to align with the current activities of the city and council's strategic plan. Also, the relationship between council and its committee's decision-making process should be very clear. The report also recommended that we have standard format for all the terms of references, and that the terms of reference contain standard information. And then it also recommended that the appointment process be based on the skills and experience of potential committee members, as well as the purpose of the mandate of the committee. So in July 2016, Council gave some direction to staff. They approved interim terms of references for all the committees, and then they asked staff to take those terms of references to the committees to get their feedback. They also directed staff to draft committee operating guidelines. So based on the Watson Report recommendation, terms of references should contain key standard information. And we have split that between unique features, which are in the terms of reference. So those are things like the purpose of the committee, the composition and eligibility of committee members, and also staff report. And then features that are common to all of the committees we have put into the operating guidelines. So those are things like accountability, role and responsibilities of member appointment processes, meeting practices, and quorum. So we've also looked at, again in accordance with the Watson Report, how the committee will get its work. So basically the role of the committee is to provide advice and recommendations to council in areas within their terms of reference. So the sources of work are going to come from three places. One is the annual strategic direction, and that's going to be prepared by staff and then put forward for council's approval. And then council also throughout the year at its pleasure can give assignments to committees. And then committees also are free to put forward initiatives for council's approval. In terms of the reporting requirements, they're important because they ensure council's accountability over the work of its committees. So the reporting requirements for items that fall within the annual strategic direction, those are going to be through semi-annual and annual reports that are prepared by staff and presented to council. If council wants to assign specific projects to committees, they will request that the committees complete a final report. So the accountability will come back through the final report. And then for any initiatives that committees put forward for council's consideration, if council adopts them, then we'll amend the annual strategic direction. So we'll have the reporting that way. In terms of appointment of members, again, Watson Report recommendations this process is based on. So it identified that it was important to consider the ideal skills and experience for committee members based, of course, on the mandate of the committee, to have a skills-based application process and appointment process. And we're going to centralize the recruitment and appointment process through legislative services. Council member roles are defined in the operating guidelines. So always there will be, the chair of the committee will be a council member, and other council, and the vice chair will be a member of the public, and council members will serve as council or committee liaison, and council will be voting members. I understand that there was some consideration at some point that council would not be voting members, but this is a requirement under the community charter. So to summarize, the committee structure and framework that we are working with reflects Watson Report recommendations. So it therefore aligns with the strategic plan, activities of council, and operational needs. It links council objectives to the committee work through the operating, the annual reports, and it also provides for ongoing reporting. And there's a centralized appointment process. Now, we're not asking council to really look at budgets tonight, just to approve the terms of reference in the operating guidelines. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of budget information so you have a sense of the cost of supporting a committee structure. So we have one full-time equivalent staff member that will be looking after all of the committees. That's about $60,000 a year plus some overtime. We had a consultant's report that estimates that you really need one full-time equivalent person to support about 4 committees. Food and beverage budget historically has been $14,000. So this evening, in the terms of reference that we're asking you to approve, I want to point out that the Grants Advisory Subcommittee, those terms of reference need to be looked at, and those are going to be looked at in the context of the core service review. And so they will be changed, so we're not asking council to approve those tonight, but they will be brought back February 2017. Also, the design advisory panel, we realize those have been omitted from the package, so again, we won't be looking for council's approval. Those will remain unchanged from what they were previously. You also note that in the terms of reference, we've added some provisions on some of the committees for grants awards. We're in the process of coming up a model for that, and that will be, again, part of the core service review recommendation. We'll be looking at that. So at this point, we plan that it will involve staff to have an active role, and that there will be a peer review element to it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Thorpe.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Armstrong. Maybe I misheard you, but I thought I heard you say under roles that the chair of a committee would be a council member, but that the vice chair would be a member of the public. And I read in the report that the vice chair may be a committee member other than a council member. Could you just clarify that for me? It's on page 43 of my agenda. I'm just wondering.
That's correct.
I'm just wondering about the vice chair. So the vice chair.
That's correct. The chair will be a member of council, and the vice chair may be a committee member
All right.
other than a council
Right.
member.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. We can still have the ability to fine-tune these committees, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you. Because like I said, one of the youth one is very unique to these ones. And the other question I had was with regards to the grants. That committee makeup structure, who or what is the Nanaimo Alcohol and Drug Action Committee? Like, is that a committee that we have? Because it's not on our list of committees. So why is there somebody a member on that person when I'm concerned on who they are?
We're going to be looking at this, so we're not asking for approval of that terms of reference this evening. We are in the process of developing a grants awards model, and so we're going to be looking at those terms of reference in the context of the core service review recommendation, which was that we look at how municipal grants are awarded.
Great. Thank you. So my only question, I think, is what's the motion that is presented in front of us? Because it looks like we're pulling some of these out or amending some of these. So can we have what a staff recommendation would now look like as opposed to what is offered to us on this?
If I may,
Thank you.
we still need to create these committees. So the number 1 on page 9, that goes from 1 to 9, you still need to approve each of them with the note that staff will be coming back with proposed changes to the terms of reference for the Grants Advisory Subcommittee. Likely you said you might want recommendation changes for the Youth Advisory. But in order to have them validly established for a 3-year term, you do need to be able to pass all of them this evening, knowing that there continues to be work.
Great. Thank you. And one last question, if I may. And then recommendation number 4 says direct staff to proceed with a call for membership for all select committees. Does that mean everybody is going to be renewed? So everybody that's on a committee currently has to reapply?
Once you approve this, we're going to have to look at the composition of each committee, because once you approve the operating guidelines, some of the terms in the guidelines say, for example, you may only be a member of one committee, and then some of the committees are talking about how they want to stagger terms, so there still needs to be a conversation with each committee to determine what the notice for membership will be, and some committees have no members.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt.
Thank you. So I'm still a little confused about recommending that we approve the terms of reference. So it's just certain ones that we're not approving, is that correct? Or are we just going to not do that tonight?
We are going to be approving them all.
We are going to be approving
Yes.
them all.
Yes.
All right. And we're also going to be approving the actual select committees.
We're approving the select committees for the 3-year term.
Right.
And we're going to endorse all of the terms of references.
Thank you. Number 5, community vitality under select committees. Did that name change?
It did. During our consultation with committee members, we spoke about community vitality, that we were looking at bringing together the elements of social, arts, culture, having a vital community.
Okay.
Mr. Anderson, can you speak to that?
Yeah, you may recall that was the Culture, Heritage, and Social Planning Committee in name in its original inception. And this proposal is to modify the name of that committee, and I suspect we'll probably take that back to the committee and speak to them a little bit more about that. But
So the question then is, the committee doesn't know about this yet. This is just something that's being recommended to council. Is that correct? I just want to be clear.
I think there was some discussion about community vitality at the terms of reference level with the committee.
Okay,
I don't think we formally
thank you.
made a change.
So that's all the questions I have for staff. I'll have more questions and comments once we get to the motion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I did have another question, and perhaps staff can help me, or maybe you can. It's regarding, I guess, process. And my question is, hypothetically, if an individual or group in the community had a proposal or a concern, would the proposal be that they go through the committee, the appropriate committee, and then from there the issue would come to council? Or would they come to council first and have that issue referred to committee? That's my question. Can somebody help?
Yes, Councillor Thorpe. These are council committees. So council creates them to assist council in its work. And at the beginning of the year, you may have 2 or 3 things that you want a committee to work on, and that's easily identifiable. And you assign that to the committee. But if there's additional things that come up in the year and you think that those things need to be worked on, then it would come from the council table and be assigned to a committee. It may be that committees get approached and they let staff know, and staff can inform council, and people are put in touch with council. But it's council's committees and council that's giving the instructions and hearing from these committees.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Anderson, you're still lit up. Are you still wishing to? Nope. Okay.
I think it's me.
Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to make a point to Councillor Hong's earlier comment about the Nanaimo youth. And we talked a bit about their terms of reference, and I let them know that come the new year, we would do an exercise similar that we did with the other committees and work on their purpose and let them go through what the other committees were able to go through. So yes, we are going to be approving all of the terms of reference, but that doesn't mean we can't bring revisions back to council for some changes in the future.
Thank you. So I see no further questions. What is council's pleasure? Do you want to take all 4 of them together, or seriatim? Move all 4? Okay. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Bestwick. Any discussion? Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Pratt.
Yes, I do. I just want to, there's 2 things. One in regard to Councillor Thorpe's comment about how issues would come to committees, and that now everything is going to come to us first and then go to the committees. And I think back to the last year or 2 being on Parks and Recreation, and all of the number of delegations that came to Parks and Recreation over the period of that 2 years, and how not all of them came to council. Many of them were dealt with at the committee level, and although they may come to council in the future, there was a lot of work done by those presenters, I guess, to make sure that everything was in order before it ever got to council. It seems to me, and this is just strictly a comment on my part, nobody has to agree with me, but it just seems that this is going to create a tremendous amount of work for council and really clog up the agendas by doing it the other way around. And I am concerned about that. So that's maybe I could get a staff comment on that.
Sure, Your Worship. Sorry, Your Worship. Through the Councillor Pratt. Absolutely. The Commission, historically, we put a lot of delegation issues that we couldn't deal, either conflict between user groups to that group. However, in the last 8 months, we've been working through that, sending things more to council. And so I think my understanding through this new process is to reverse it and see how that goes. And then council, as it goes through, if it does clog up agendas, maybe we want to tweak what you put towards the committees as it goes through. That's my understanding.
But what the added thing is like without knowing an example of the types of issues that you're talking about, if it falls within the mandate of a committee, then the committee can deal with that. They don't have to come to council. If it doesn't fall within the mandate and it's something new and different that isn't with one of those committees, and council goes, well, we're not sure if it falls within this, we'd like to send this to this committee or that committee, that's how that would happen. So there'll still be delegations that will go to these committees because it falls within their mandate, and we'll probably see that with parks. But we'll also see some other changes with parks, recreation, and wellness, because there is a relationship with the RDN, and they're talking about some of their committee structures as well. So this is one of the areas where we're going to continue to work out some of the details for the regional district and for Nanaimo.
Thank you. So thank you. I think that probably just need to wait and see how that all unfolds. The second comment that I want to make, and this is again strictly a comment to number 5, community vitality, which is a change from arts, culture, heritage, and social planning. I just again want to say that I'm not in favor of combining those two things, and I understand there already are a few issues around it. I'm not happy with that one at all, and I just want to voice my opinion on that one.
And Your Worship, if I may, I heard Councillor Pratt loud and clear, and a number of other councillors when we had one of our briefing sessions. And so staff met and we talked about what are some of the ways to address what's happening at that committee, and Mr. Anderson wants to speak to that in more detail.
Part of, I guess, the process of working on the terms of reference with the committee, some of the comments were made whether or not someone who comes from a social background would have expertise and interest in dealing with issues that might be with respect to culture and heritage. So as part of this approach, what we thought might work pretty well is if we look at the idea of having subcommittees as part of the broader committee. And so if there's an issue or a project that the committee is working on that might fall primarily within, say, a social area, we would have a subcommittee struck as part of that to work on that. So part of that is to do with how the committee works on specific topic areas that might require expertise that's not within the realm of some members of the committee. The other component of this is the grant review, and we've talked a little bit about the grant review process. Modifying could have basically a staff review with a peer review, and the subcommittees on the topic areas social or culture and heritage could be struck as peer review committees and provide input on the grant review process. And I think that addresses one of the primary concerns about merging the committees, and that was around how do we deal with grants when I'm primarily coming from a social perspective and I'm reviewing culture and heritage grants, for example. So we've talked about that approach with the committee.
And that's the same approach that's going to be used at the public safety as well, because it's such a diverse mandate there, and the composition may require that certain projects have a subgroup or a working group that are assigned to topics. So it allows to have that integration and that type of collaboration, but it also lets experts and pulling in outside experts to assist on projects as needed.
Your Worship, could I just also speak to that as well? Ms. Samra had a meeting with Mr. Anderson and I, and she actually suggested splitting for that very reason the committees, but as Mr. Anderson and I had been attending the committee meetings, he actually felt that doing the subcommittees and moving forward, we were actually making some progress. And about the Parks, Recreation, and Wellness, it's a very draft, but on page 47 of the report, the last page, is a draft for the annual strategic directions. So this will be coming mostly from staff. And so Mr. Harding, for example, will have a very good idea of the types of things that come before the Parks, Recreation, and Wellness Committee, and he can, council will be approving these in January. So it gives some, basically, council's going to approve what it wants the strategic directions for each committee to be come in the new year. So I just wanted to provide some extra input.
Thank you. I appreciate all of that clarification.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to thank all the committees who sat together and all the members to work on this. It was, I think, a major piece of work. So, and particular thanks to Mr. Anderson and Ms. Gurry for their help. And is it Ms. Brown? Who?
Mary.
Yeah, Mary. So I would like to thank them because it did take a long time. When I look at the question of whether an issue comes to council first or to the committee first, I'm looking at page 2 of the report. I'm not sure what page it is in the whole agenda. But under committee work and reporting strategic directions, it does say to ensure accountability for activities, and then it says, in the case of committee-initiated projects. I understood that to mean that there could be presentations made directly to the committee, and that the committee could entertain taking that forward to council if they thought it was a good initiative. So I am thinking that the practice of having delegations come to the committees seems to be part of this. That's what it looks like to me. So, yeah, I know they said that, but I was just saying it's actually here. So something to remember that it is contemplated in here. I repeat what Councillor Pratt said. Some of these I'm not sure that they're the best way to go, but we're working on it, I guess, and trying to make things work. I am still, and I will continue to express my disappointment that we don't have a standing committee on, or a select committee on the environment. I think that just the world is teaching us that we need to do that. We have so many countries are coming together, talking about climate change, talking about initiatives. We have the Paris Agreement. We have the United States saying that maybe they're going to move out of it. We have our Prime Minister talking about ways to meet it, but there's lots of discussion, national discussion, that those things won't be met. I think Nanaimo really needs to have a very clear stake in that game. And I would like us to, in the new year, reconsider that decision. Because I know that some of the committees I'm on, when we talk about an individual who formerly was on the environmental committee, having a role to play on the community vitality, arts, culture, and social planning, it's a struggle. It is definitely a struggle to see where that piece fits in for them. So I would hope that we will reconsider that decision and join the rest of the world in working on environmental issues, making it a number one priority for us.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
A lot of what I was going to say has been said. I was really impressed with the Community Vitality Committee and the meeting that I was at the last time, and how members of all of them came together with encouragement and developed the terms of reference and worked on the mandate, et cetera, et cetera. It was quite fun to watch, because with the reticence to begin with, the people that were willing to work on it got together and they made some really interesting decisions, and I think it has the potential to be a really good committee. And as with the rest of the committees, my personal like would have been to see the social planning spread throughout the committees like environment. But we didn't do that. It's possible to do it in the future. I think it's going to work out quite well the way it's set up, and we will see. Everybody seems to be on board now and moving ahead, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. Councillor Yoakum.
Just quickly, I just want to state that to be crystal clear, these committees can also be amended. They can be changed. They're not working. We will agree to that. And I'm glad we're having a serious conversation on these committees, because you got to remember, we didn't have to discuss committees at least 6 months into our term. So it's good that we're getting here. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no further speakers. I'm going to call the question. with items 1, 2, 3, and 4 together. All those in favor? Opposed? Show Mayor McKay opposed. Next item, proposed transition process for tourism in Nanaimo. The purpose is at Council's request to provide recommendations for an alternative approach to tourism and destination marketing delivery by November 30th, 2016. We have 7 delegations, the first one being Mr. Kevin Shaw. Thank you, sir. If I can
Good
have
evening, Kevin Shaw, Nanaimo. Should we care where our taxes go, who it's handed to? While I understand and thank city staff for looking for efficiencies amongst arm's length city-funded organizations, this should not be a recommendation tonight. Just a month ago, a bunch of us downtown property and business owners were before you, telling you in very factual and logical terms, we are not and have not been happy with how our money is spent. Now it's being recommended that Council transfer Tourism Nanaimo's visitor centers to the Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Association for an unstated, undetermined, yet to be announced amount of money, maybe to March 2018, maybe it'll be longer. Is the DNBIA the best one to look after tourism centers? We need to first look at its record. You need to decipher its record. Last month, you all voted for a full accounting to investigate what the BIA presented to you, saying what it did this year. Has that been completed? Have you dissected it? You are now being asked to hand it another task. We are not happy with the job an organization was set up to do, never mind giving it another. You're chopping up the Economic Development Corporation and slicing off tourism, but the core of you also states there's no authority to give the matching $220,000 yearly to the BIA. You have not dealt with that finding yet. But another hand is already offering something else, expanding the BIA's reach all the way from downtown to the bypass, the visitors center. The BIA has already received millions upon millions of dollars over its 28 years. You sit at this table to be prudent with our money. Please do that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do you have a question for the delegation?
Yeah.
You have a question for you. Councilor Brown.
Just on your last statement where you suggested that the BIA has received millions and millions and millions of dollars over its last 28 years, did
Correct,
you say?
1988.
So my understanding was that the matching funds didn't actually come into play until maybe 2001 or so?
That's right.
So
Something like that.
So from 2001 to now, you're suggesting
That's
that
another
it's been...
220,000. But if you look at the past 28 years, how much money would you think then? Let me turn the question to you. How much do you think then they've gotten since they were set up in operation?
Well, I think that they have agreed to that additional tax. So that's basically saying to the city, could you please collect this money for our purposes? It's not the city giving them money, it's them electing through a process to be to have an extra tax. Is that not how you see it?
No, I see it quite like I see it now. We're going to get into the council initiative, and that is a reverse negative billing. So if you want to this time approve when it comes up in another 24 months, a petition of support, which I'm hoping you'll do, because then the 300 property owners can then vote if they want it, if they don't. Not having the opposite done when every 5 years you have what's called the council initiative that has been going, then it's the negative billing vote. So if you don't send in a vote, then it gets counted as a yes. That is unfair. That is not democratic.
So it has been our process, and I suppose I would argue that it was our democratic process, but we disagree.
Correct.
Fair enough.
Thank you. No further questions, sir.
Perfect. Thank you all
Motion to
very much.
receive the delegation. Moved by Councillor Yoakum, seconded by Councillor Hong. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The next one is Mr. Dave Lawrence. If I could trouble Councillor Fuller to take the chair, please.
I just want to say I'm disappointed in this. I think that there's been a lot of businesses that are disappointed with how the DMBA has been handling things downtown. I think handing over tourism to them would be not the best idea. Maybe come up with some other ideas. I talk to a lot of students that go to VIU, and there's the tourism program up there. Maybe get some of those people to run it, or just look at some alternate things that could happen with this, because I don't think the city may handle it in the right way. Thanks.
Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. The recommendation in this, and I don't agree with many of the recommendations, but on this particular one, it's just shifting the visitors kiosks. So it's not, I just wanted to be sure that we all understood it is not shifting everything from tourism to the DMBIA. It's just this small piece, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks.
I think it would be, for me, I talk to so many people that move to Nanaimo. Like, I'm from Nanaimo, and I think a lot of us are from Nanaimo here. And I think that it's interesting to get kind of outsiders' perspectives. They kind of view Nanaimo in a different way. I think people get stuck in their own vision of what Nanaimo is. And you have, I talk to people every day who are moving here from Alberta and other places, and they love the downtown, and they love Nanaimo, and they're very passionate about it. And I think that would be an interesting perspective if you have VIU students who kind of come from all over Canada to go to VIU now, to have them kind of promote it in a new, interesting way.
No other questions for the delegation. Can I get a motion to approve? Councillor Bestwick. Councillor Pratt, all in favor? Next, Mr. Richard Payne.
Good evening, Council. My name is Richard Payne. I am a resident of Nanaimo. I am a business owner, director of operations at Payne Consulting on Victoria Crescent. I am a member of the downtown business people, and they come to me and we talk amongst ourselves about whether we feel happy about what's going on downtown, specifically in our little area. Our area at times seems like the little ghetto of Nanaimo, especially with the looks of the recent burning buildings that were there on our corner, and with other problems that we've had. As was mentioned by one of our other business owners, we did speak on the downtown business improvement, on whether we were feeling that they were actually doing anything for us. Tourism is very important for all of our businesses downtown. I mean, we all have high hopes of people coming in, visiting our establishments, growing and being able to hire more people in Nanaimo. Unfortunately, our lack of trust or of the Downtown Nanaimo Improvement Business Improvements Association makes us wonder why, at this point in time, why they're under our question and scrutiny, we are considering giving them more responsibility and more money. Now, whether it be small or whether it be large, it is in some ways validating them as an organization, which we are disagreeing with. As a part support of the businesses, I'm just here to voice a unity of us that are down there, that this should be looked into in the deepest part, and we should find out, are they really doing anything, and why are we giving more money if we haven't at least looked at their track record and see it, because we don't see, as us businesses, a lot of improvements. Besides that, I think that's about all I really have to say.
Councillor Hahn.
Thank you. I just want people to know that's watching that Victoria Crescent isn't a ghetto.
No,
by far, it's not a ghetto.
It is improved.
I have a business down there.
Yeah.
It's improved 100-fold. Mm-hmm. So to let people know that think that it's a ghetto down there, yes, we had an unfortunate incident that the building burned down. But again, I don't think that has anything to do with the business owners in that area, and that I don't appreciate people thinking that any part of downtown is ghetto. I think the RCMP and the city has done an amazing job to clean it up over the last decade. Thank you.
Seeing no one else, motion to receive delegation. Councillor Bestwick, Councillor Pratt. I guess I could move right to the mic because that's about the only way it's going to work. So motion to receive the delegation by Councillor Bestwick and Councillor Pratt. All those in favor? Approved. Thanks. And next on the list, Mr. David Frost.
David, Chair, is attending another meeting. He was supposed to be here, but it's gone long, so he's not here.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jean Lemieux. I hope I said that right.
Good evening, Your Worship.
Name and address, or name and
Can you
place
hear
of
me
res-
good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Name and place of residence?
My name is Jean Lemieux, Sound Heritage in downtown Nanaimo. What basically I want to talk about is about the tourism, which is a highly important thing for all Nanaimo. It would be good to promote the north and the south and the east and the west of our town instead of just the downtown. It has a larger scope for the tourism that do come here. There's the First Nations, there's real estate, there's the hospitality industries, there's a lot of events. There's the 101 things to do in Nanaimo which have to be promoted to bring the people that do come here to enjoy what we offer. I don't think the Downtown Business Association could do that, but a different entity might, especially if they consider some of these aspects of different big players that bring people here in Nanaimo. That's basically what I wish to say. Like the CMN, the First Nations, the VIU, which you mentioned. I think the more people we involve, the better it will be for all the tourists that do come and visit us, and more taxes that will come in, even if we do include the malls. That's about what I have to say.
Councillor Hong, are you wishing to speak to this?
No, that was from last time.
Councillor Pratt.
Thank you.
Where are you?
Push my name there.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question for you. Sir, I just have a question for you.
Yes.
So I just wanted to be clear about what you were saying. Are you saying that in general with tourism, you want to see the entire city highlighted and you maybe don't feel that that's happening now? Or are you referring to the DNBIA taking over the visitor kiosk?
I'm actually talking about both. I think
Okay.
a different entity might do better than the Downtown Business Association.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see no further questions. Motion to receive the delegation, please. Moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. So, Mr. David Frost? Not here? Okay. So, Mr. Cliff Wiltshire.
Good evening. I'm Cliff Wilshire. I'm a business owner in downtown Nanaimo. Actually, I own several businesses. I introduced myself to you a month ago, at which time I expressed a great deal of dissatisfaction with the Downtown Nanaimo Business Association, as they do not represent me. They do not do anything for my business. I believe that they were not handling the funds that came from my businesses very appropriately. And at that time, the council voted and assured us that there would be a review of their budget and their expenses. Now, I assume a month is a very short period of time and not long enough to review the small budget that they have. So, now it's come to my attention that more funds are going to be allocated to the Downtown Nanaimo Business Association without reviewing what they've done with the funds that they've received in the past. As a business owner, my contribution to these funds it's not huge. It's, about $1,000 a year. So it's not a lot of money. But it's still a significant amount of money, and the amount of funds that are contributed by Victoria Crescent add up to a significant amount of money, which we could do a lot with. Jerry just said that the police are doing a better job. Well, someone was in John's shop this week causing a fuss, one of the street people, and when they left, there was a weapon found. Yesterday, there was a gentleman arrested in front of Richard's shop because he was doing something and causing a disturbance. 4 days ago, there was someone arrested in front of my shop because he was aggressively panhandling, causing a disturbance, and wouldn't leave. This has very little to do with the Downtown Nanaimo Business Association, but the $10,000 odd that are contributed every year to this association could be well used to eliminate some of these problems rather than going to pay executive salaries, which they are currently. And when you do the review, you'll find out that that's what's happening. So, any further funds going to the Downtown Nanaimo Business Association, and use that lightly because it's not a business and it doesn't represent the businesses. I've never had a phone call from them. I get emails from them occasionally. I've never had a visitor from them, so I don't know how they could represent me very well. I am of the opinion that any further funds, whether it be the total tourism budget for the Nanaimo, which is an incredibly important thing. This city needs tourism. Desperately, we need tourism here. And handing the funds for this center to an organization that has not proven its competence seems to me like a huge misuse of our tax dollars. We need to be sure that the organization that gets these funds and administers this center is capable and competent to do the job we need. There's a lot of opportunity to promote Nanaimo and bring a lot more tourist dollars here. Let's make sure we're making the right decision. We as an organization of Victoria Crescent businesses are going to pursue all of our possible alternatives pertaining to the funds that we're contributing currently to the Downtown Nanaimo Business Association. We need those funds spent on our street, not going into someone's executive salary. We need the funds. Our street needs the promotion, it needs the development, it needs the security that can be provided with those funds.
Thank you very much, sir. I don't see any questions. So the motion to receive the delegation, please. Moved by Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Pratt. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And the next speaker is Mr. Henry Traw. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Your Worship, councillors, city staff. My name is Henry Traw. Address 11 Bashing Street, Coast Bashing Hotel. I'm also representing the NHA. Just a couple kudos. First, tourism's been great this year. Hotels have never been this busy. I have to tell you that we have a year like this, go through next year like that, just good for the city. It's done very, very well with it. Also have to give kudos to the RCMP. They do a great job when we call. They're there when we need them. I have to mention that because sometimes things just don't get said, and I think we have to be known that the city is going the right way with our bringing guests to the city. I mean, we have a lot of people that have come to our hotels. We've never seen occupancies like this in 30 years. It's great to see. However, to talk about this, what's coming up next year, my understanding is that Mayor and Council gave staff direction to reorganize tourism services in Nanaimo. This was based on direction on comments made in two separate reports from consultants. The reports both identified that there is no collaborative between different groups of delivering marketing services for the city. Mayor and Council specifically referenced bringing together the efforts of Tourism Nanaimo and the VICC. Council then apparently took it one step further and gave staff direction to loop in the DNBIA. The report that's going to be presented addresses none of this. The report recommends a further splintering of tourism services. Destination marketing is going to go to TAVI. Visitor services will go to DNBIA. Some new other body, whatever it will be, will look after the VICC marketing. We're not sure where that's going to go. Another body will look after the MRDT. There's no mention of what happens to our social media management, the management of the TDF fund, production development, management and promotion of the VICC. This can't be left unaddressed. Sports tourism and the MRDT funds. Any new plan should include an integration of these funds. The problem what's going to happen is after we go through this process, what happens next? We really need to know what's our next step. Does everything just implode if we don't agree to what we're going to do? Because that's what we're worried about out there. If we're worried about if we just let things go and we don't say anything, and if we don't like it, can we come back on Tuesday and say, or Wednesday, no, Tuesday and say we made a mistake. We want to talk about it. But then it's too late. You guys have voted. You can't just switch things in midstream. Some of us think in the industry we could probably do that. I don't see how we can do that. I don't know how we can just let things go and we accept it, and then we don't, we accept the proposal, and all of a sudden we don't like it, and we got to come back to you. We want to know right from the beginning if this is going to implode, we need assurances that we can keep going forward. What's the next step? Because we can't let tourism implode here. We've always talked about trying to keep everything under one hat. I don't care if you want to call it the DMO or destination marketing or what you want to call it, but you have to try to keep everything together. Now, if you want to splinter it off and give it to 5 different groups and whatever, we know some things are just going to be for a short period of time. I think people don't understand that if the DNBIA do take the visitor center, it's just to oversee it. I don't think people realize that. Maybe it's not, maybe it isn't. I don't know. But at the end of the day, we have to watch how many we're going to give this off to, because that's not what we've talked about or what was discussed previously to split this, to tear apart everything. Tourism was running as tourism before. Now we have to just fine-tune things the way they were before. That's great. Then let's talk about that. But let's be careful how much you're going to implode here. Or if we are going to implode, and then we have no tourism, and then we're stuck for 2 years not knowing where we're going to go. We can have a plan for 1.5 years. That's a long time. 1.5 years. Think about it. It's a long, long time. But I know things can't get done overnight. We know that. But we need assurances that we're going to go in the right way with this and the right direction. And that if we're going to put a body together, if you want to call it a board of directors or whatever, to help oversee the tourism, we need the right players in there. We can't just have meetings or these groups that we want to call it to sit back and we're just going to get a bunch of people in there that aren't even in our industry talking about our industry. We need the right players involved. And that doesn't mean we just want all the hotels and motels in there. We want to have the right mixture. We need to have, if it's hotels, motels, you need to have campgrounds, you need to have the Port Authority. Tourism is a vast area. and we know that. But let's make sure when we put the right body together to oversee this or run this, it's the right body so we don't keep doing this every year or two. We need to make sure we do this right the first time. I'm afraid that if we accept what we're just saying we accept, and we can't do any changes because it's been accepted, now what do I do? In our industry, some people are telling me, Henry, you maybe should not say anything. Let's just see what happens. I can't do that. We want to make sure we do this right so we don't get stuck here. We want to keep our tourism flowing the way it is.
Mr. Troy, you're at time. You're at overtime.
I bought 2 minutes.
I do have some questions for you. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you very much for your 5th visit or 6th visit. You get that extra minute. What do you see? Right in front of me right now, I see destination marketing, destination development, visitor services continuing the way they were in our report until March 31st. So that's still going on. The Engage and Vision exercise that I see would include, I believe, some of the TLC now, the Tourism Leadership Committee and that. And then I'm not certain about the visitor center to the DMBA. I don't support that personally, but it depends on council. What different in this do you see that you would like to see than the proposal here now?
Well, I still think, if you allow me, I don't know how many minutes I'm allowed to talk on this though then, but at the end of the day, it's a long process here to figure this out because one, I think you need a board of directors that reports to council on tourism. So you guys have answers what's going on. So you get the regular reports. And maybe you are getting all the regular reports and everything's updated and we're never going to be in this situation. But I still think you need a board of directors that's going to hire the executive director or whatever you want to call that person to run tourism. And once you have that person in place, then you have to set up the tourism area. But in the meantime, TAVI's involved and maybe they're good to be involved because we have to get... we can't lose ground here. There's a lot of us are spending a lot of money in marketing, and we don't want to get caught that we're out of programs and stuff like that. And I can tell you that the tourism people that are working now are still trying to make sure that we don't miss a beat here. But there's going to be support that's going to be needed to make sure this gets done. So you're going to from my knowledge, I would say you need a proper board of directors. You don't need another sounding board. That's the last thing you need. You need somebody that can make decisions. And at least the board of directors, hopefully you give them the power to make decisions for tourism. You don't need any more advisory boards. How many more do you want that can't make a decision? Do a board of directors that accounts for you guys.
That's what I thought we were doing with economic development, but it seems like you said in our reports that there's no coordinated effort, and that's what we're trying to get to. It's trying to get some sort of coordinated effort.
But if you want to get a coordinated effort, then why are you splinting it all off?
Well, it's coordinated on tourism, not tourism and economic development and hotels and everything else.
Tourism and economic development are two different things.
And that's what I know.
You can't say it in the same breath.
They don't say, that's what I'm saying. They used to be in the same office, and it wasn't working. They used to be separated, and we said it wasn't working. We moved it into this one conglomerate. And obviously, from the reports and core service review, it wasn't working. So I appreciate your input very much. So.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt.
Thank you. The idea that tourism wasn't working under NEDC, at least over the last year, to me is not entirely accurate. And
but I never said it wasn't working.
No, I'm not asking you that question. That's my opinion. That is my opinion. And I appreciate your comments, Mr. Traw, on the fact that this has been a really good year for tourism. And I have seen reports on tourism that really make me proud of the things that they have accomplished. So my question to you is, do you think you've been properly consulted? Do you think the right people have been properly consulted as we have to this point where now we have this report that is asking us to make a decision, or do you think there is more consultation that is needed?
I think you need a lot more consultation. You can't do it in 2 meetings. And did you have the right people at those meetings?
I don't know.
But you have to find out.
Yeah.
But the first meeting was on November 4th, the get-together, and I wasn't there because I had to go out of town and move back to Nanaimo. And at the end of the day, we had another meeting that was presented to us what was happening on the second meeting. So that's not really consultation for
So you don't
3
feel
days.
that the right people were consulted on this?
I'm going to say that's not enough time.
Or that you would like to have
can't
more?
make a decision in 2 days, in 4 hours, and come up with a major decision like this.
Appreciate your input. And I agree that tourism is absolutely crucial to this community. We do depend on tourism. Certainly the businesses in Nanaimo depend on tourism. So I appreciate your comments on this. I'm not inclined, just from what I've heard, to accept what's being brought forward tonight. I myself would like to see more consultation before we make a final decision. I have a couple of questions for staff, but I'll save those for staff and not for you.
Can I answer?
Yes.
I just don't want it to get. I just don't want things to get imploded, though.
I appreciate that,
You know,
and
there's a way
I
to
would
keep
totally
going
agree
on
with
this, and
that.
we want to keep going. We don't want to stop. We want to help the process. We want to make sure the right people are involved in that process. We don't need 30, you don't need 35 people in that process. You need the right number in there too, though.
I have one other question for you. And you mentioned putting a board together
Yes.
to monitor, I guess, oversee, govern tourism.
Right.
Just as the NEDC board is being set up has been set up in the past and is set up now to govern in the future. Do you have experience with other tourism entities where this has
Yes.
been the case? And,
Yeah.
and where would that be?
Winnipeg.
In Winnipeg, okay.
And the Winnipeg.
And you've seen that working well?
Yes, very well, extremely well.
Okay. Thank you. That's an interesting point I hadn't heard before, so thank you for that.
Thank you, Ms. Sammer.
Sure. Just want to speak to something, clarification between all the moving parts, and I've done this a number of times when we've met, when we've been talking about the DMBIA, the VICC, NEDC, and Tourism Nanaimo. And what I've said is that Council is tasked with making different decisions about each of those entities. How are you going to fund the BIA? What is the role of the BIA? They also have recommendations from consultants saying that BIA should contribute to conference marketing. So they've got a number of things that are in front of them. With the Vancouver Island Conference Center, that contract terminates March 31st, 2017. So what we have when this first came out in October was a period of 3 months of continuity that the status quo remains for Tourism Nanaimo. Tourism Nanaimo, delivered today, November 27th, 2016, is exactly the same as it was November 27, 2015, 2014. There hasn't been any changes yet. Furthermore, the recommendation from staff, am I still on the mic? You guys can hear me? Is that there would be an additional 3 months transition up to March 31st, so that there was a 6-month period of continuity and stabilization and an assurance that all aspects of Tourism Nanaimo would continue to be delivered. At the same time, a process would be established to come up with recommendations for how to deliver tourism. But other processes will inform that. And the example that I'll give to you is that the expression of interest for the operations of this venue will be completed on Friday, and that EOI will go through some review and be issued, and it'll be asking across North America who's interested in running the conference center, destination marketing, tourism, conference marketing, a whole range. It's a very, very broad EOI. And we don't know what we'll get back from that. But what we get back from that will also inform the process that Philip's going to talk about today. So we're trying to establish a process that is includes consultation, gets the right people at the table, and tonight is really about getting recommendations in front of council for a process to ensure the community, the tourism experts are consulted, and that options for how to run this come in front of them. I understand that your consternation has been about it being 17 months long, and maybe that period is too long. Maybe 12 months is too long. We're recommending up to 12 months, but maybe this thing is solved in 6. Maybe you strike that committee, which will be something more than advisory committee. It doesn't have to be called an advisory committee. It can be called the Tourism Authority. Those right people are on that. They work on it for a period of time and bring recommendations to council. The decision on the visitor center does not need to be made tonight. Why? Because we got to March 31st. So that doesn't have to be there now. This is just a phased approach trying to come up with different options. The one thing that staff really want to get a decision out of council is, yes, we need to have the right body at the table from tourism. We've been meeting with 40 people, 30 people, small groups. What is that group? Because the Tourism Leadership Committee, which is a creature of the NEDC, if NEDC is not delivering that, eventually that committee will wind up. There's going to be a void. And NHA isn't the sole body to do that. So that's, like Philip's going to take us all through it. So there is stabilization, not imploding, making sure we have a strategy moving forward. Difficult to make all the decisions because when we run that EOI, maybe this magical thing comes forward and says we're going to strike the Tourism Commission, we can do all these things and we'll run this conference center for you. And that's a possible outcome which might usurp this other 12-month one. And I know I'm going on, but it's trying to point out that all those things are happening. There's been several questions about the DMBIA. They present their budget next week to the Finance and Audit Committee. At that meeting, they'll be presenting on what they want for the year, whether or not they're going to get the matching funds at 100%, 50, or 0. That's a decision of council. They'll be looking at that, but also informed in that is the efficiencies where the DMBIA has contemplated moving into this facility to work with the VICC at Lithica to try to get some synergies over the next 6 months for marketing and for working on the conference center. So there's different things being done to continue. It's not going to abruptly stop. It hasn't stopped. It's still being funded, and there's time to do this. And this may not be the perfect recipe, but it's something for council to consider this evening and make some decisions about.
Okay, and this is where am I allowed to answer? This is where I want to make sure, because if I don't ask for it it doesn't get imploded, or if I don't ask, then when you recommend something, how much of it are we allowed to change as we go along? And as I hear now in front of everyone, that we probably do a lot of changes with it. But normally when things get passed at a city level, at this level, things don't get changed a lot. There's a mandate you have to follow. And it doesn't say on there, oh, by the way, we can change things as we go along, and we're going to see how things move, and the bodies will all move. That's a lot different than when you present something, and we look at it, and we're going, whoa, hold on here. This is not going where we think it's going. Because if they vote on it, we're not happy with it. The best thing I can do is say maybe we do a continuance on it, so we keep rolling with it, so it doesn't get stamped and approved or whatever. I don't know the right wording, sorry, apologize. But if there's a continuance on it, then we can keep moving with it.
What we're trying to get council comfortable with this evening is a process, not final decision points on the actual delivery. Some of the options in here may be set aside tonight. Council may not want to make a decision on what's going to do for the Tourism Visitor Center because they don't need to tonight.
Yeah, and I'm not even talking about just the business center. That's a very, the small part. They have staff that's already working it, doing a good job with it, and they're already got staff working it right now, so it's not going anywhere. But my thing is what's happening with the next, right? There's more to it than that. It's a lot of marketing. I know. Wait, Phil, sorry. But we just want to see where it's going to end up. But when we think things are being brought to council, we think this is done, it's done, and then what? How do we fight on it after? We're not here to fight. We're trying to work together, find a way to make things work, and try to keep it all in-house as much as possible instead of splintering off everywhere. That's all.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
One of the first items in phase one is to establish a tourism advisory committee with members appointed by council from a cross-section of nominated stakeholders. Is that what you're talking about when you're talking about a board?
Well, that's right. I mean,
would
you
be?
call it advisory
Yeah.
right now.
So, and I get where you're coming from, but that is how I see the so-called advisory committee, as being that board that you were talking about. I don't think it's going to be about 40 members. I heard there was a meeting with 40 different groups or something that could
I
have
think
been.
you're going to have to wait till
Yeah.
the presentation happens.
Yeah, but I think that might be what you're talking about, and once we get the presentation in, that'll give us more information on it. And like Ms. Sammer was saying, things are staying in place until at least March, the end of March. So hopefully we
You may
can.
want to extend it to September.
Exactly. And that's what I believe this Tourism Advisory Committee would be in place to do, I think.
But
So,
I mean, but here's my question I have though is, you're saying council's picking it, and on what criteria then?
it says cross-section of nominated stakeholders, so they better be stakeholders. And nominated by you guys.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
But you're saying, but if you read it closely,
Yeah.
it's nominated by the council.
They'd be, cross-section.
That's my point.
I see what
It's
you
the
mean.
wording, guys. It's the
Well,
wording on it.
appointed by council from a cross-section of nominated stakeholders. So it doesn't say who's going to nominate the stakeholders. You're right there.
I'm just throwing that
Yeah,
out there.
no, that's a good point. It's an excellent point.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Thanks, Henry. I just wanted to let you know that council can change. We can still make things happen. Like prime example tonight is our committee structure. Right? We did the stuff, and my comment was, well, can we still make the little tweaks after it's been struck? And the answer is yes. So we can still do it. And I think this came out, this is vague. There's a lot more moving parts. There's no budget implications on staffing. There's a lot of other stuff, but this, I think, was just information for us to take the first steps so we know we have something to work with, whether we like the first part, we don't like the second part, we don't like the third part. We can always change those before we get to those parts. It's hard to change once we've done those things, right? And that's the problem.
But Councillor Hunt, from our end, you have to look from our end. You asked for the tweaks, I'm asking for the tweaks right now.
Yeah.
So I can officially ask for tweaks.
Yeah. For us to give the tweaks would be a lot of consultation, a lot of stuff, and then by that time, we're going to be into a year.
But we're professional stakeholders too.
Yeah.
that have
Exactly.
that we have a lot at stake right now.
Yes, and that's why we wanted to invite you into this group so we can actually discuss all these, but we need to start with a council decision to form this group to start that. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any further questions, Mr. Trott. Thank you very much. Motion to receive the delegation. Moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Hong. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. So, now we're on to presentation. Just want to advise, just before you start, I just want to advise the gallery that and those at home that we will be breaking at 9 o'clock. So it may very well be, we may go a few minutes early depending upon where your the status of your presentation is.
All right. Thank you very much, Mayor McKay and Council. Before I start, I do want to point out that Dave Petrick from the Vancouver Island Tourism Association has joined us. Nope, I guess he had to give up, so he's no longer with us. He could have been a great resource. We could always maybe try him back. What we have tonight before us is the start of what could be an incredible process for Nanaimo. It won't be a process without some bumps, but I think there's a tremendous opportunity here to create something that's been missing for many years. And I want to emphasize the word proposed. Councillor Hong was just mentioning a few moments ago where we're not talking concrete tonight. We're basically taking a first step forward, and it's perhaps a step forward that doesn't actually happen that often around this horseshoe. We're actually doing something that in my time here we haven't done very often. We're saying, hey, what can we do, and how can we work with a tremendous number of people to do it? I think there's a bit of an irony here in the sense that the process that's being identified as problematic is in fact a multi-month stakeholder engagement process that's facilitated by professionals and has a mandate to be as wide-reaching as possible. When was the last time that was done? Not very often on sensitive, problematic issues. That's the process. We want to put together a very wide-reaching stakeholder process to find out what the best solution for this topic of transitioning tourism out of the NEDC can look like. It's an example of visioning, having great conversations, and determining what works for Nanaimo. All at the same time while making sure that other examples from across the island, around BC, from across Canada, are looked at as strong alternatives or strong potential opportunities for a place like Nanaimo. This is a very favorable exercise that we're basically putting before Council tonight as something to consider. And it has a number of components. Now, I recognize that one of the components has some challenges, and I think it's great for us tonight to identify that. The sooner we can identify things, the better, because we want to have an outcome that has tremendous support so that as we work our way through the process, we don't suddenly find ourselves dealing with a problem that wasn't identified early on. So let's just start by looking at a couple of the key pieces here. And the first one is the multi-month engagement visioning exercise. As the piece is written, it's designed to be drawn from a wide, comprehensive group of stakeholders. It will look at all the different examples that could exist or should exist or can exist for Nanaimo. And it will have a sense of what type of organization should we be building here. And one of the great examples that's increasingly being put forward as a sample is a destination marketing organization. And this is a harmonized organization that brings together all the different components of the tourism and things that support tourism into a single entity and has a single mandate to really be successful and make sure everything is covered off, everything is available. And this multi-month engagement visioning exercise is the method of creating that entity, whatever it's called. It's a long journey, or it could be a short journey. It's really dependent on what that group of people who come together wish to do. Where staff fits into that is to be a part of the conversation, but we're certainly not going to be the ones banging a drum to lead it because we're not experts in this field at all. Our interest is making sure that Council has a very successful engagement process. It's done effectively, it follows the best standards available, and it's led by a facilitator that knows what they're doing and that people are happy and pleased and excited to be a part of that exercise. That's the first piece. The second piece is the establishment of a tourism advisory committee. Now, I may have misplaced the language on this. I may have underestimated the word advisory. In some communities, advisory, people are fine with that term. In other communities, they have problems with it. I think that term can be revisited. If there's better language to describe it, we can certainly swap that in. I don't want that word to take away from the purpose of this group. This group is designed to come together and provide the leadership, the expertise, and a sense of where are we going through that multi-month engagement process. That is their goal, that is their mandate, and they need to be made up of a group of nominated stakeholders who represent all of the tourism people in the community. They can't be a single pocket of folks that for the last several years have maybe been in a position of having a certain amount of power. They need to be people that are fresh, that have experience, that have maybe been involved in the past, but they're representative of what's needed to be successful in having that multi-month process take place. As a body, it would likely replace the TLC group that currently exists, and it would then have a similar type of terms of reference, but it would be two parts. There'd be a building component, because the first several months of this group's mandate is to move through that multi-month process. And then the second part of their mandate will ultimately be to operationalize whatever that entity looks like. So there's a building and an operationalizing component required. The third element of this phased approach is the creation of a short-term solution to continue the destination marketing and destination development work that must be done. The ball can't be dropped there. You don't want to have your multi-month engagement process underway and your leadership group working away only to have the daily business of tourism suddenly come to a grinding halt and be plagued by problems. So the solution here on the operational side for destination marketing and destination development is to bring in Tourism Vancouver Island, which is a well-respected organization that has a very big and very related mandate, and provide them with the resources they need to undertake the short-term operation of the tourism element of Nanaimo while this engagement process is undertaken, so that there's assurance that we're maintaining the standards that we all expect, while at the same time having that critical conversation that has to take place to get us to that successful end state. The fourth component is, of course, the suggestion of the visitor center being operated, again, temporarily by the DNBIA. And they were in a position to meet with staff, and they did indicate an interest in, similar to the Vancouver Island Tourism Association, to assisting to that transitional phase. So that's why they were identified as a possible solution. Having moved through phase one, that then takes us to phase two. By this point, the vision would have created. The destination marketing organization would have been identified in whatever shape or form that looks like through that facilitated process. And you would then have to move into the business of actually creating the new entity, whatever that looks like. The process of creating an organization, the process of looking at how it will be led. All of those decisions would have to be made over a period of time. And that will take, again, a few months to get to that place. So the original timeline of January, February of 2017 through to March 2018 is, it's a long period of time, I will admit that, but there's a lot of work that has to be done here. These aren't decisions that we want to make quickly. They need to be made through a lot of good conversations and a lot of important conversations with constant feedback, not only to council, but also to the broader community of stakeholders in the tourism industry. There's a lot of backing and forthing that goes on when you want to do this successfully and make sure you end up with something that everyone's happy with. The third phase is then the start of operations of the new entity itself, and we could see that possibly happening in 2018. So in addition to those timelines, I've also identified other timelines, particularly for the multi-month engagement process, January 17 through July 17, the establishment of the Tourism Advisory Committee, or by a different name, would have a timeline immediately. I mean, my desire would be to get the groups together, the people together that wish to be involved in such an organization, and immediately undertake the process of advertising that this is to be created, looking at ways to attract the right people, and then having a process to identify how a terms of reference would be created, and then a business of bringing forth recommendations, likely nominated by those individuals that are coming together to say, this is how this could look, and then bring those to council for council to look at and consider. So that would be how the timelines and dates would work on the advisory committee. And I would also point out that David Petrick, who would be leading the destination marketing and destination development piece of this, has also been very clear and that he would be very pleased to work with the committee throughout that transitional phase to make sure that he is delivering on not only what the new entity could look like, but making sure there's a good connect between where he will leave off as a contractor and where this new entity would take off from. So there would be a good transition and a tremendous amount of planning for that to all happen very, very successfully. So again, the proposal tonight is talking about an engagement process. That is what we're talking about. There'd be tremendous opportunities for people to get involved, lots of time to do it. And if there's too much time, it can be scaled back. If there isn't enough, it can be scaled up. But at this point, it's early days, and council needs to decide if they're comfortable with the main elements of this proposal. And then if there are others that they're not comfortable with, then I think it's great that we have that conversation tonight because, again, we want to get this right from the get-go.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. There's lots of stuff there that's interesting and new. I think it shows that there's a tremendous gap, though, between what you're wanting us to understand and what the group that you met with last week did understand. So I'm just wondering if you could give me some sort of snapshot on how you thought this as you rolled it out to the group of tourist operators, for want of a better word, received the presentation that you gave to them. Did you feel like they were on board, or did you get a sense that they weren't confused or that they weren't?
Through the chair, there were 2 meetings held. The first one was designed to get initial input on what a process could look like, who ought to be involved in a conversation around a process. We also identified individuals that might want to be a part of how to facilitate such a process. And then there was also a sense of what are we working towards, and really the answer to that is a single common harmonized entity that can bring together a number of different pieces. With that in mind, it was clear that A, there has to be a process, and B, there has to be a leadership piece to put it forward, both of which are in the report. And then third, there has to be a short-term administrative solution to run it all while that process is undertaken. And then there's some other pieces like the visitor center, which itself also has to be administratively dealt with. So the second meeting, which occurred last Thursday, in advance of that meeting, this particular report was circulated. And yes, there were some concerns. I spent 2 hours with those who were able to attend, explaining much as I've done tonight, how it would look. And I think some were maybe better understood the report at the end, while others may not have. It is a relatively complex undertaking, and I certainly wouldn't expect everyone to get it right out of the gate. And the fact that we're re-explaining it again tonight is, again, part of perhaps what has to happen so that we're all clear on what we're doing. And I'd rather have this conversation now than in 3 months' time when there's confusion and we're back before council trying to resolve a problem.
So would you be prepared to go back to that group before council makes a decision on it, go back to that group and ensure that there's a clear understanding on their part about what the city is proposing before we adopt that?
From my point of view, I'm always welcome to seek input, seek clarity. I think without any clarity, you'll have confusion. So we are moving very quickly here at this particular juncture because there are a number of things from the point of view of funding and difficult conversations that need to take place. If we move slowly, you may have people saying, well, what's going on? You've now got a bit of an information vacuum. If you move too quickly, you run the risk of maybe not getting clarity, which is obviously what's occurred in this particular example. So the more opportunities that I have to better explain, I think the better off we would be. Council, I still think, is advised to give an okay on the creation of that advisory group. I think there's a very strong interest in seeing that take place ASAP. And I think that from the point of view of wanting to have a solution that has full buy-in and a good length of time to have that conversation, the multi-month engagement process is also something that would be worth your while approving. And then finally, the involvement of Tourism Vancouver Island, I think, is also critical.
I think one of the things when they reported back internally after the last set of meetings is you're not actually going to get consensus from this group at this point in time. Philip did check in to say, are you going to be appearing as delegations? will you be here? And the
Carry on.
checked in about whether or not delegations would be here this evening as a way of checking into what level of understanding was there. I think one of the things that we're battling is building consensus on what's the right approach. Some people with a strong desire to get to the solution, they want to strike that corporation. They want the tourism corporation to be in there and have that board of directors. But you've asked us to come up with a process for engagement to decide what is the best option at the end of the day. If staff didn't come back and say you should also form a tourism authority and incorporate it, strike a board, and use them to oversee it. So what we've tried to do is come with a process to figuring that out. And these meetings have been dynamic, and they have been all along the way, and those are some of the challenges that we're working with. So what we're hoping is to get council to go with a process, and the sooner you have one body that is agreed to amongst the tourism industry to be the right representatives, to be advising you, I think the better that will be. I think that is a priority for you, so you have that sounding board and you have that expertise to be able to provide solutions to you. If you're going to be looking at any of the recommendations for this evening, for phase one, I think approving the phase one, saying yes, it's multi-month. If you want to restrict us down from 17 months to 12 months, or up to 12 months is a time period. Establishing this TAC or authority, you can call it a board, you can call it whatever you want. But I think the sooner that's there, the sooner you'll have the right people providing you with that information. And the service agreement with Vancouver Island, Tourism Vancouver Island, is important because both of the consulting reports have identified that the success for the Vancouver Island Conference Centre is strongly contingent on a destination marketing plan. And the core services review also determined that that particular item is an important one, along with the destination products. And because TAVI is an expert in that field and has demonstrated its ability to deliver that up and down the island, that was the reason why they were approached and felt comfortable in providing it. They don't need to be doing it for 17 months. It could be for a lesser period of time. So in terms of those recommendations, it would be the first three, and perhaps strike the DMBIA off the table this evening. It's a bit premature to be making that decision.
Thank you very much. I do have other speakers, but it's coming up on to 9 o'clock. So we're going to call our recess. We're going to recess for 10 minutes, and we'll see you back here in 10 minutes. and gentlemen, and thank you for your patience. So, continuing on with questions for Mr. Cooper.
Yes.
The next one is Councillor Pratt.
Boy, I tell you, trying to keep my train of thought for 10 minutes like that, that's hard. I thought your presentation was very good, so thank you for that. The people that were very concerned in the community, in the industry, so on, that of course came and talked to various councillors and certainly sent emails in, I don't feel like they got the clarity that we got tonight from what you were saying. So if they need more clarity, I think we should give them more clarity. I also, I understand why TAVI needs to be involved, maybe. I'm wondering about our staff, about the Tourism Nanaimo staff. What happens? Do they just disappear and we carry on with TAVI instead? Is that the plan?
Is now back online, is that correct? So we may wish to have him speak to what his plans look like for the expansion of his organization. But currently the funding to the NEDC ends at the end of March 31st. And at that point, there would obviously be a cut that would occur.
But that staff is Tourism Nanaimo staff.
Currently, Tourism Nanaimo staff, which is within the NEDC. So they're not city employees.
They're not city employees?
No, they're employees of the NEDC.
Which is an arm's length
Correct.
organization of this. Okay.
And their collective agreement is independent of the cities.
So that's one of my big concerns, I think. And I don't really want to be talking a lot about things I shouldn't be talking about here. So I'm going to ask staff to tell me to shut up when I should be shutting up. No. But I am having a hard time with a group that has done really good work over the last year all of a sudden disappearing and not being a part of this process up to whenever we decide to do something new and different. And so I'm wondering if there isn't some synergy there, isn't something that we can do there.
Right.
Because we have had emails from people in the know, in the community, who absolutely think our tourism group has done an amazing job over the last year. And we've had people say they don't want us to implode this group. I just want to be sure that we do this in a way where there's going to be total cohesion throughout so that we don't lose anything. And I understand that's what TAVI is about. But is TAVI going to give us everything we got before? Or is it all about is it the destination marketing piece that I know that's an important piece. I'm not making sense at this point, I don't think. But do you understand what my concern is there?
I believe so, yes.
So I can we just had the QP in our in-camera presenting generally on tourism. So what we have here is the city of Nanaimo flows $570,000 a year as a commitment to the provincial government and to the Nanaimo Hoteliers Association as a condition of the hotel tax being approved. So the city needs to spend $570,000 a year on tourism from 2011 or whenever, I don't know when the hotel tax came in, but the city has chosen to flow that money to NEDC. The city now has chosen not to flow that money to NEDC. So that's one part of the equation. When that money stops flowing is dependent on this transitionary plan, likely March 31st. There's still technical requirements to give 60 days notice to the union about the funding being cut off. And then it is the municipal corporation, which is NEDC, which council provides funding to, is the other party to the agreement. So the board of directors of the NEDC will be making decisions about changes to its funding, and will be working with CUPE to talk about the impact to their collective agreement. And so those decisions will be made by your municipal corporation, by the directors you've appointed to the NEDC, and they'll be working with CUPE to address this. In terms of decisions about where the funding will go in the future, each of those organizations will make their own decisions for hiring and what type of personnel they need. There may be solutions in the interim that sees the city deliver something in the interim. Those decisions haven't been made yet, but the union relationship is between the board of directors of the NEDC and the union.
Thank you. Okay, so what you're actually saying now then is, you see, my understanding was, and it's probably incorrect at this point, having listened to what you just said, was that because we were splitting tourism from NEDC, that the piece for NEDC would continue, the $250,000, whatever it is, and then the other piece for Tourism Nanaimo would go to Tourism Nanaimo. And I think of Tourism Nanaimo as the entity that works for us.
No, Tourism Nanaimo is the name given to the group that works within the NEDC in the tourism department. They kept the nomenclature of the former society that I think was dissolved. But all of the staff that work for the NEDC, the ECDEV staff, and the tourism staff, who are referred to as Tourism Nanaimo, are all employees of the NEDC, and the collective agreement is between the NEDC and CUPE 401.
Thank you. That clears that piece up for me, I guess. Wow, okay. I would like to hear from TAVI. Are they still here, and are they wanting to say something to us? And I know that other people have questions, so I'm not sure where they should come in. I might have some other questions. I've got to look at all my notes here now. Thank you.
Mr. Patrick, are you still on the line?
Yes, Your Worship, I am.
So you've been listening for quite some time, on and off. I wonder if you've got some observations with respect to Mr. Cooper's presentation.
Yes, Your Worship. We were asked to put a proposal together for an interim solution, which we're very interested in doing. I think the track record and history of Tourism Vancouver Island is one that's very solid. We've done a similar contract in Vancouver Island North, where we contract with the regional district to deliver their destination marketing services, and have done that for 8 years. With our proposal, and in regards to staff, the question that was raised, what we would be planning to do is mixing our existing human resources, blending those with increasing human resources by 2.5 to 3 FTEs, and those positions would be posted. Obviously, we'd be looking for the very best employees to deliver on behalf of Nanaimo, but certainly those postings would be open for existing staff to apply for.
Thank you. So, further questions? Councillor Fuller.
Where to begin? I need to get some stuff straight. So everything, the way it stands right now, is going to go through right through the end of March?
Well, you still, as a council, haven't made a decision on the funding level that you're going to give to NEDC for 2017. Staff is working with the NEDC to have an interim 3-month portion added to preserve the continuity of the delivery of tourism services.
Through the end of March?
Yeah.
So essentially, when would TAVI kick in? At the end of March, or are we looking at getting them now?
They would start the work now and transition over that same period of time.
So who is the funding going to, TAVI or NEDC?
There'll be a portion that you're going to approve to go to NEDC as part of the 2017 budget, which is coming up next week, and approve, or have us negotiate a portion that's going to go to TAVI.
I don't know if I'm getting clarity or not. It's very confusing to me right now.
There is an overlap. It's not going to be 100%.
Okay, so there is an overlap, thank you.
Yeah.
That I needed to know. And then in the meantime, we want to establish this committee or board or whatever we want to call it. Tourism Advisory Committee is what it's called here, but it could be a board. And so that would start, we would try and get that up and running very quickly, I'm presuming?
Correct, yes.
And if that board were established and came back in 5 or 6 months and said, wait a minute, let's just continue doing things the way they are and not stick with TAVI, would we be doing that? Or would we just be disregarding what they're bringing forward until after a contract with TAVI?
The arrangement with TAVI at this point is intended to be a short-term fix while the multi-month engagement process is undertaken. Now, if during that process it was determined through consultation and lots of discussion that TAVI is in fact a fantastic ambassador and vehicle to deliver tourism in Nanaimo, well, then that would be a conversation that they would have. At this point, what we're talking about them doing is simply to be the transitional group that keeps everything running while that conversation occurs.
And I get that, but I'm hearing 18 months, 16 months, 15 months is what's written in here. 12 months would be good. But what I would want to hear if we were to keep TAVI it would be from this board if they thought it was a good idea. And until we know that, I wouldn't even want to presume that that might happen, because what I'm hearing is, and I hope I'm hearing it right from the tourism stakeholders, is that they would rather keep it in Nanaimo as opposed to outside of Nanaimo and do the destination marketing from within. I'm not in tourism. Destination marketing seems to make sense when you're doing it, and it makes sense to do it within the community you're doing it. I know there's 5 or 6 of them throughout BC, and that's great, because the one in Nanaimo could work with the other ones. So I don't know where I'm at with this. It's really,
So I think the
trying to wrap my head around it, but
the recommendation from staff will be amended based on the conversation that Philip had with the group last week. I think the 18 months might be a little bit long, and that looking at an agreement up to 12 months, obviously we'd have to negotiate flexibility within that, because there'll be the transition period to figuring out what your solution is, what authority are you going to create, then you got to create it and then transfer it back if it doesn't stay with TAVI.
so the recommendation is going to be changed. So why are we going to vote on it tonight?
It's an amendment for you tonight.
Okay, so you're going to make an amendment tonight, and then, okay. I'll go with the flow for now.
Thank you. I've got other speakers that want to ask questions. Are they particularly related to Mr. Cooper's presentation, or do you want to bring a motion to the floor, a recommendation to the floor, or a motion rather? What's council's pleasure? Okay. So do we have somebody that would care to move a motion? Before we do that, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor McKay. Dave Patrick may wish to jump in here, but in terms of that 15-month period, the reason that was identified is it allows the new entity that gets created through that stakeholder engagement process in 2018 to align the budgetary process with, I believe, how the province does their business. So, Dave, if you're available, could you perhaps speak to that?
Yes, Your Worship. Our proposal actually is 15 months, which would be a staged implementation, January through March, doing some of the planning work with a smaller commitment to the overall delivery, working with the existing staff to ensure that there's proper delivery done up until the end of March, with full implementation taking place in April 1, and our proposal is to carry that through to March 31. That aligns with the provincial government's destination marketing co-op program, which we are in the process of making an application for an additional $250,000 for destination marketing. Our thought with our proposal is we'd like to be able to continue through the end of March so that we can do full delivery of that program and ensure that it's executed appropriately, as well as being able to do a good quality handoff to whatever that entity is. And our belief is that the consultation process will likely take a good 6+ months. And after that 6 months, there's still the development or creation of an entity and its implementation. Hence the reason that we've proposed that 15 months to the end of March 2018.
Thank you very much. So, with respect to a motion, can we get a motion on the floor, please, Council? Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to make a motion. Jane, hope you can follow this. I move phase 1. I like to scrap off, that's the multi-month engagement and visioning, but I would like to scrap off multi-month. I would just like to say engagement and visioning exercise. Because like I said, we can have rock stars in this town and it might not take multi-months, who knows? I like to scrap timeline on there. I don't want a timeline because I don't want us to drag our feet till July 2017 if we don't have to. Service agreement with Tourism Vancouver Island, I would like amendment to that it be on a monthly basis because we can have rock stars. And I would like to ensure that we have at least one existing staff member that they hire to continue through, so we have a continuity of staff members. They say that they need 2.5 or whatever they do. They might find some other people, but I would ensure that they have at least one existing staff from our tourism department that they hire to ensure that that follows through. I'd like to take off the DNBA right now on that because I think that we have time for that discussion. Phase 2, I would like to take off all the timelines. Phase 3, I'd like to take off timelines.
Do we have a seconder for Councillor Hong's motion?
No changes to the committee?
The committee as in?
The tag.
Well, there's timelines proposed as soon as possible.
Do we have a seconder? Seeing none.
No, I'll second it with amendment.
Councillor Yoakum.
Thank you. I just didn't hear in there establish a committee or / board unless I was daydreaming. I'd be more comfortable knowing the experts in this field are going to come together, like Mr. Tra and other speakers as well, come forward to call a board or committee to report to whomever the committee decides to and make sure tourism doesn't implode and the right players are there. I couldn't agree any more. So I'd like to incorporate, Jerry, I like the motion, but I'd like to make sure the experts in this field are coming together and they'll expedite this. So
Yeah.
that's a friendly amendment if you
Yeah,
don't mind.
that's phase 1. It was all those except
Okay.
the amendments on phase 1. I
I
said.
haven't spoke for 2 hours. Just kidding.
So I'm just hearing that the amendments are strike multi-month, strike timeline, establish a tourism advisory committee, and then on the service agreement, you're suggesting hiring one unionized employee. No timelines on that. Strike the DNBIA and strike timelines from phase 2 and 3. I would just like to speak to one aspect of it, or if you moved it and seconded it, I need to speak to the union issue. You second it? Okay. So I think there's an opportunity to work with CUPE to look at options for all 5 of the existing employees over the next few months. Positioning one of them at TAVI may not be the best solution. It may be that it would be a city position. And I'm saying this because TAVI is not unionized, and there are union issues that are there, and that there has been some expression from the city about potentially taking on one of those employees in another role. So I'd like to be able to have the ability to work with QP to talk about what can we do to assist these existing staff find jobs. But I don't want to put an organization into a position where they may be unionized when they're doing a contract for services for 1 year.
Okay, I could pull that.
Thank you.
And it was also month-to-month contract. So.
Okay. So we have Councillor Thorpe, Pratt, Hong, Brennan, Kip, Beswick. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair.
Motion.
To the motion.
Before you get started, I just wanted to recognize tonight, I just realized, or just been informed, that we have the honor of the presence of one of our former mayors, the Honourable Graham Roberts. Thank you very much for spending some time with us tonight. Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. This is obviously an extremely important topic and discussion tonight, and I'm not going to be able to support Councillor Hong's motion, and I'd like to explain why. I actually am quite supportive of most of the recommendations that have come from Mr. Cooper, and I want to thank staff for the work they've put into this. But I'm feeling very unsettled that we're sitting here tonight sort of brainstorming on the fly, making amendments by the seat of our pants, and I would prefer that we took a little bit more time and, as somebody suggested earlier, have Mr. Cooper go back and meet with our local experts and stakeholders, take into account the discussions that we've had tonight and the suggestions that have been put forward, and have him come back to us in another week or 2 weeks with a retooled set of recommendations that maybe we'd all feel happier about. I'm just not comfortable tweaking things as we're going along here, and I fear that we're going to overlook something or not make a good decision. So for that reason, I'm not going to support the motion that's been put forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt.
I think the discussion tonight has been very valuable, and my questions were around the fact that, or some of my comments were around the fact that the group that met with staff to come up, that were presented, I think, with this, is that correct, Philip? This was presented to the group. There were a lot of misunderstandings, and I'm sure some of those have been cleared up tonight. I hope some of those have been cleared up tonight, and I hope that group begins to feel like we are moving in the right direction on this. If not, I'd like them to have the opportunity to provide that input. And although I hadn't thought of it before, I do agree with Councillor Pratt. I definitely agree with myself, Councillor Thorpe, in that it's 1 week or 2 weeks. It's not a long time. This is such an important process that we absolutely need to get right. I also would love for the staff to speak with that group to find out who they think should be on this TAC. Yes. And, or whatever the board is, or whatever it is. And so that we have the right, representatives, the people who can provide the expertise that's needed. So, Philip, do you want to comment on that?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes, through the mayor. So at the end of the meeting we held last Thursday, it was actually quite a good ending. There was that very discussion about putting out a call to those that might be interested in supplying names to sit on that group. and to initiate that process, because one of the things we want to make sure is that those that end up on it are the right people and fully supported in the work that they have ahead of them.
So my question then is, have we identified who those people should be? And by that I mean who they should be representing.
That's the conversation we need to start having immediately. And I did indicate that the city was certainly keen to engage them in determining who's out there that could be a part of that group and how they might come together.
Right. I agree with Councillor Thorpe. I don't think we need to rush this, and I think going back and making absolutely sure that they heard what we heard and that tonight's discussion has really helped them to wrap their heads around this report and that they feel comfortable moving forward. And I also agree that I'm not sure we should be the ones making changes to this at the moment. We're not the ones who are the experts in tourism or who are involved in tourism or who are stakeholders in this. And I'd love something to come back that the people in the audience, the people in our community who actually benefit from this, work within it, feel really comfortable that we're making the right decision moving forward. So I do agree with Councillor Thorpe on that.
Thank you. We've got 5 more speakers. I wonder if we can, if I can advise council not to put any motions to table at this point so that everybody has an opportunity to speak. And then once those 5 speakers are completed, we can determine whether or not we want to table. Okay, Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think I support Councillor Thorpe and Pratt in their endeavor to slow this down so that we get this right. I did ask whether we could see any value in going back to the group that was spoken to make sure that we're all on the same page, that they understand what we're proposing, because quite clearly there was dissonance here tonight on what people drew from the meeting and what they were intended to hear. So definitely wasn't together on that. I think tonight what we're doing is we're doing committee work. And we shouldn't be doing committee work. If we were unhappy with this report, we could have said, we're not ready. We're not ready to accept this report. Please go back and work with the tourism group and then come back to us. So I think that massaging the report that we have and the recommendations we have to such a degree that we're contemplating is probably a mistake, because we won't probably get it right. And we should put the brakes on, go back to the group, talk to them, and that our staff can bring us another report, probably very similar to this, but one that they're certain that the community has understood the direction we want to take, and that there be some degree of consensus, some degree of buy-in. Otherwise, we are fighting an uphill battle, and we don't need to, because I think that the tourism industry wants this to work as much as we do. So let's sit down with them and take their points and see how we can integrate it into where we want to see this go. So I can't support the motion as it is.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. This was done 5 years ago. In 2011, January 13th, a committee called the Tourism Strategy Committee brought forward a report, and we did the exact same thing. And we went through it, and they tried to, what we need to do is establish a mission, a vision, objectives, a strategy and tactics for our service priorities and the tourism structure that we want to run. And when we say we want to pick something, we don't have that skill set, I don't believe. So what we need is a tourism strategic committee, not an advisory committee or anything like that. And they worked last time from 2010 September right through to January 2011. And a report came through February 2010 that something needed to be changed. The committee then was struck of City Council, Tourism Services, Tourism Nanaimo, Parks, Rec, Culture, DNBA, Chamber of Commerce, and Nanaimo Accommodation Sector, NASA they called it then. During the review, they put in a process of a SWOT, strength and analysis. So we did this 5 years ago. And this is not some big deal now. Again, we're doing it 5 years later, and we want to redo it. And the reason we did it 5 years ago was it wasn't working then. And so now 5 years later, we're finding again that it's not working. So yes, the people that were involved before had a 5-year strategy. Did the staff go review the old information that was done? I don't think so. We forget about old reports. They kind of get tabled. So from my view, if we want to make this more efficient and more effective, we need to go and form a strategy committee that will produce a mission, vision, objectives, and that service priorities that this community wants. And they are the experts, along with us, that can make that decision. So for me, sending it back again, and staff's gone through a great thing. I heard things from the committee members out there too, and the concerns that nothing was done. But there's another 5 years later, we're doing it again. But this doesn't need to be an advisory committee. It's a strategic planning committee is what it is. And it's an ad hoc group to this council to give them, and they met every week from September 2010 to January 2013, probably took Christmas off. So every week the group met, all those people, and they really pulled it together. So if we think we got to just send it back for another couple of weeks, we got to get the strategic committee going. That's what we need to do. We have to get the experts going on their horse and running and drive the train, drive the cart, drive whatever we got to do to get tourists to come. And again, the report was February 10, Al Kenning, Ian Howitt, Tourism Nanaimo contract. So the information, a lot of it's there. We have to redo it and get the committee struck and do this. So I support the idea that we form a strategic committee to do this. So whatever's on the table now for me, I'm not sure, but I want to be more efficient and effective, and the people out there and the people here can do that if we agree to move stuff forward. So I think I support what the motion councillor is trying to make. The timeline's tight, so if we want to start now, we're going to do October, November, December, and January. They did a 4-month process, so we better get going, because the tourism people are already working on next year. All the advertisements are gone out. We're really looking at what's going to happen September the year after to start that advertising, because this summer should be sewing up by now in all our events. So I'm not certain if I like the name advisory committee. I'd rather have a strategic planning committee, and I'd rather give them the focus of what we want them to do and get that mission and vision and objectives. Right now, we're just saying get together and do something.
Can I ask
I'm done.
Philip a question? At the last meeting that I was at, I didn't make the one that you did, there was some not cutting up tourism, and then I thought at the meeting that you went to, the majority of the group wanted to give everything to TAVI for the next year.
At the original meeting that was held November 4th, there were concerns expressed about, in the short term, having different parts of tourism operated by different elements. And one of the proposals that was put forward was that perhaps Dave Petrick could take on additional parts to what he was proposing, which were primarily destination marketing and destination development. Dave and I did talk about that, and as I recall, he was certainly open to some of those ideas, but not all of them. So that's why we have DMBIA, for example, looking after the visitor center.
Was there much opposition to TAVI taking the destination marketing in the short term from that group?
No.
I'm just pointing this out because he did do the check-in, who's coming to speak tonight. A lot of the people that did come to speak tonight, I don't think were on the guest list for it, because we haven't been able to reach everybody in the tourism industry. There has been other separate tourism meetings, I think, held by the TLC, and some of the vocal people from the first set of meetings, I thought you said were nodding heads and seemed to be at an okay place for where we're at. I'm just saying all this because it's difficult to get this group together. It's good. We're going into the Christmas season. It may be 2 or 3 weeks before we can get the entity of them all together again, and it will be basically presenting the same sort of thing here to them, and I'm not sure that you're going to get full consensus. I understand the importance about the consultation, but perhaps if you get the process up and running and you get this TAC, whatever, your board, then you can start to get that type of input. But of course, if you want us to go back another time, we can do that.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Much discussion and much conversation as it relates to this report. Phase 1. The most important portion of this is in the third, from the bottom of the paragraph 1 to me, is develop into a single destination marketing organization, which is, I believe, what the purposefulness and the intent was when tourism was determined to be removed from NEDC, and I heard the experts say that NEDC and tourism shouldn't be spoken in the same sentence. So to establish a single destination marketing organization in phase 1 of the phased process in a multi-month engagement, well, anything over 1 month is multi. So might it be 2 or 3 or 6 months? Sure. And is single destination marketing organization important for Vancouver Island Conference Centre and tourism and destination development marketing and all the rest? Yes. Do we have to have the conversations and the dialogue in order to get there? Yes. So with the people that are the defined experts in the industry? Yes. So if we send this back to another meeting and another consensus building exercise and all, well, that's what phase 1 says to do. So let's just do it a little quicker. Maybe multi-week, but I'm not going to dance on the head of a pin here about whether it's weeks or months. It's really irrelevant. Establish a tourism advisory committee. Okay, strategic committee, board of trade, whatever you want it to be, but it's going to be the same people that we're going to go out there to engage in the first phase of the multi-week engagement process and visioning exercise anyway. So let's get on with that. The service agreement with Tourism Vancouver Island is an absolute necessity. Mr. Petrick's on the line right now, and that's destination development marketing, and we've already made a decision to go destination development marketing for the most part. So are we going to hold that up too? I don't think that would be a wise thing at this juncture to do either. The timelines are too long. The 15 to 18 months, the Aprils, the Mays of 2017, 2018 might be too long, but we're not going to find out if we don't get started. It'll just give us enough time if we don't get started. If we go back to more consulting and more consulting and more meetings and more meetings, let's get on with this recommendation that we have in front of us. Because the planning, the implementing, the visioning, the exercises, all of those things are going to be done with the exact same people that we're talking about that we have to go back and talk to right now to make sure that they get it, to make sure that they're on the same page. Well, can we please do that through the engagement and visioning exercise? Isn't that what this is intended to do? Phased process. Good, let's get on with it. Let's tell Destination Development Marketing that they're doing this starting on March or April 1st or whenever that starts. We can talk about the staff and the minutia of how all of the little detail is going to take place throughout the visioning exercise. That's what it's for. And then come back and tell us what happened. So I'm not voting in favor of the motion. I'll vote in favor of this. Take out the DMBIA. I only have one question. What are the operating months of our visitor information centers? What are they? All year long? 12 months of the year.
Kiosk up at the highway is open. It can be run by one person.
So 12 months of the year. So my only comment to that is simply going to be that 1970s triptychs and Rand McNally's. So I had to stop at visitor centers. I've got this. I can ask whatever that lady's name is. She's going to tell me where I am. I can Google it on wherever I'm going. So I don't understand why visitor information centers, to be quite honest, and I'm going off, are such a critical piece to what we have to provide. Put a couple of computers somewhere, let people go stop at the visitor information center and find out where you're going. So I guess Google doesn't work, and I guess Airbnbs don't work. And I guess all of these things on your laptops and your computers and your iPhones don't work. So it's interesting to me that we're going automated in everything. We're going infotech and everything, but now, for me, the visitor center, put it off to the side. It's the fourth thing on the item here. We don't have to make a decision on it tonight. That's all I got.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Just to echo Councillor Bestwick's words, I think my motion is pretty much what's on here. I've deleted the dates for simplicity, so because I know that the tourism industry wants stability. Whether it happens, they prefer to happen at stability to be sooner than later, so that's why I took the dates off. So if it happens sooner, it's great. If it happens later, I'm sorry. But that's an option that we can put the dates back because that's irrelevant. I did take the DMBIA off because I think we still have time. It doesn't start until March, so we can still discuss that. But I wanted to get this going. My agreement with Tourism Vancouver Island could be 15 months, it could be 18 months, it could be 11 months. That's why I said let's do a monthly contract. So that's the only real amendment to the motion from the staff. And I think the tourism industry deserve an answer today. They're still going to engage. They want to know what we're doing. Whether they like it or not, at least they have something to work with. They can prepare. You know, their livelihood is tourism. And if we give them a direction and they know where we're going, this phased approach is great. At least they can plan and they can give us their input and we have time to change. That's why I want to get this going sooner than later. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Yocum.
Thank you. Just quickly, I obviously supported the motion, seconded it, for simply the fact I heard the words, want to get it right. I absolutely want to get it right as well. The ecotourism, abotourism, sport tourism, or general tourism in general, experts are the stakeholders that we got to bring together to steer those key areas of tourism. The people steering this tourism is none of us. So let's be clear. So the reason I'm supporting this is let's get it out there and get the experts on all those subject fields I just stated together and get this rolling. I do not need more reports. I don't want to hear more reports and this and that. I want the experts doing that stuff and definitely want to be a support and champion when the experts come forward and say their needs and be a support with their needs and wants, maybe to make even Nanaimo even a better tourism than the great numbers we heard this year. So Mr. Traw has filled up for 5 years straight and all the hoteliers, etc. in the city. So that's why I want to get it right. And getting it right is not keeping it in our hands. Getting it right is getting it in the experts' hands. So that's why I want to share those few words. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
I just want to make the point that the experts came to us tonight and said we need a little more time so that you do get it right. So they're saying bring it back to our hands. Let us give you a little more flavor for how we're viewing this before you make any of your next decisions. And I don't want to argue the point, but I did want to make it clear that that's why the experts came to us tonight, was not to say, yeah, great, move on with it. It was to say, hang on, slow down a bit.
Councillor Fuller.
Yeah, I just want to, I appreciate all the feedback from everybody. And just to make a point, the experts, 6 of the 7 were speaking directly to the DMBIA and little else. The other expert wants it done right. And I think by getting it started and getting those experts involved in it right now instead of waiting 2 weeks, which could come back to another 4 weeks, which could come back to 6 weeks. Let them get on with it. Let's get this committee formed, whatever it's called, a strategy, advisory, select, whatever. Let's just let them do it and let's get it going. That's all I would say.
Thank you. Before we close this, I'd like to speak myself, and that is that I was on the board of Tourism Nanaimo in 2004, 2005, when I was the operations manager for HarborLinks, and I had a lot of conversations with my general manager, who was heavily involved in Tourism Vancouver. And we talked long and hard about what their successes were and what their failures were. It had become a pretty bureaucratic organization by and large. But in any case, for example, in 2004, September 2004, when the city took away destination marketing from Tourism Nanaimo and gave it to a branch of City Hall, I believe that was the first nail in the coffin of Tourism Nanaimo as we knew it. And that was in September 2004. We had two councillors that were on the board at the time. There was Councillor Manhas and Councillor Tyndall. And 9 months later, I asked the question, what have you got on the ground after 9 months worth of work? We had actually fully wrapped a bus that was promoting Nanaimo day trips from downtown Vancouver hotels to Seattle. But tourism through the city didn't have anything on the ground. So I hear what Councillor Fuller is saying about things taking a long time. It's always been my vision, or at least from talking to other people that have been there, that tourism needs to be funded by, managed by, and for the benefit of the stakeholders. So if we're a stakeholder as the city, it's my belief that we need to be a stakeholder, not run it, not be in charge of it, that it be managed and funded for the benefit of all the stakeholders. And that includes ourselves, the city, Restaurant Association, downtown merchants, the NPA, the Port Authority that is, with their efforts with cruise ships, the Nanaimo First Nations who are just on the cusp of some really, really exciting projects, the attractions and the tour operators, transportation, the ferries, the planes. They have capabilities to promote package tours to Nanaimo. The accommodation, and that doesn't just include hotels, it includes motels, B&Bs, it includes the new Airbnbs. So I got a call from somebody who was an ex-Nanaimo citizen who's in Whistler now. And they said, you need to take a look at the Whistler model. They refer to it loosely as One Whistler. One Whistler is where everybody works together. And if you are a group that's involved in tourism that don't want to work with the larger group, then you're told to get lost. We're working as a group here. So a name that came up during the course of the discussion was somebody who's in Whistler, who's been involved in Whistler for many years, who was 8 years the Director of Community Relations for Vancouver 2010 Olympics. Her name's Maureen Douglas. She's very well known in the industry, and she has the ability to facilitate conversations. I think that's what we're looking for here. We've had this permutation, that permutation, we got this wrong, we got that wrong. You know what, we've really, in my mind, we've really stepped closer every single time to where we could be. I think One Whistler is where we should be. I think everybody here, including Tavi, has something to offer. But I think we need somebody to come in here and help us facilitate that conversation. And I think I heard Mr. Cooper say that. And I would really recommend, if there's anything tonight where we're going to consider tabling or sending back to staff, just for one more sort of breath, let's take our breath for a minute, that we should think about bringing a facilitator such as Ms. Douglas. I don't even know if she's available, but she comes very highly recommended. She's had many, many years of multiple Olympics under her belt, including Vancouver, including Sochi. And I think we need a facilitator to come in here and help us. Okay, so there's a question on the floor. Is Council fully conversant with the question? I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Show Councillors Brennan, McKay, Pratt, and Thorpe opposed. Motion carries. So the next item Business Continuity Plan. The purpose is to present a recommendation from the Finance and Audit Committee for council approval regarding the development of the city's business continuity plan and budget implications. There is a recommendation on page 54. Is anyone willing to move the recommendation?
I'll make the recommendation, but I would like to remove the amount.
Okay. So the motion then would be?
That council approve and direct staff toward development and implementation of a citywide business continuity plan.
Thank you. And it's been, and you're seconding that, Councillor Hong? Thank you. Discussion. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Bestwick?
No.
Okay. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. And I think before staff undertake this, I'd actually like to report back on the cost first. Would that be an amendment to the motion?
Could be.
Councillor Bestwick?
That amendment?
I'd like to make that amendment. Councillor Bestwick?
Thank you. Ms. Samra or Mr. Bema?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just want to remind Council that what's in front of them is a recommendation from the Finance and Audit Committee. In terms of process, this is the end of the procurement process. The procurement process is now complete. We went through the request for qualifications first, identified out of the respondents the company that would undertake the work, negotiated the price, and I can understand Council's concern about the price at this point, but it's a mute piece as opposed to the concern that you always say you want to show up and say, I have $5, can somebody do this for me, and you get it for $4.99. But in this case, the procurement process is complete. All we're asking for here is to commit the funds from the general reserves and move on with the project.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
So I guess I have to withdraw that. Because that wouldn't make sense.
Just that. And the seconder? Yeah. Or, no, it's no longer seconded.
I'll second it.
You'll second the motion that's on the floor?
Not the motion that's on the floor, not, well.
I withdrew my amendment. I withdrew my amendment.
Okay, withdrew your amendment. Okay, so the motion stands. Can we have the motion read, please?
That council approve and direct staff to develop and implement a citywide business continuity plan.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Brennan?
So without the figure of 125 in there, do you know how much you can spend? Could you spend 175 then, or?
So through the chair, the procurement process is done. The company that's going to undertake this work has been identified. The budget has been negotiated. This process simply is asking for us to commit the amount.
So can I be clear on this? This is simply a recommendation that we actually put the money towards paying them.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, that makes sense to me.
Thank you. So for my curiosity, does the motion that's on the floor actually approve the expenditure of $125,000? It just says do it?
It approved allocation of 125 towards development and implementation of a citywide business continuity plan. That's the motion.
No, that was not the motion. That's not the motion.
Well, that's the motion I was hoping for.
Ms. Armstrong.
The motion put forward by Councillor Bestwick and seconded by Councillor Hong is that council approve and direct staff to develop and implement a citywide business continuity plan. So it essentially removed the dollar value.
So if I understood the process, Your Worship, I think Councillor Hong withdrew his amendment. So I would think my recommendation stands.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
My understanding was that Councillor Hong withdrew his amendment.
That's correct, but the motion that's on the floor does not have a dollar value on it.
So you don't have a motion on the floor?
Councillor Hong's amendment was, and that staff report back on costs.
Before you implemented it.
Yeah.
Yes, I think what Mr. Mem is trying to tell us is that this is a direct recommendation from the Finance and Audit Committee, which is us. So we've already recommended it at the Finance and Audit Committee with report. Councillor Brennan, or Councillor Bestwick, pardon me.
I was just going to withdraw my motion to try to simplify this thing, and just, so if I can withdraw the motion, I'll withdraw the motion. And council approved the allocation of $125,000, development and whatever for the citywide business continuity plan, and I would like from in the future that there is a notation on these that the Finance and Audit Committee recommended this to council.
Thank you. Thank you. For clarification, Ms. Armstrong, the original motion was withdrawn. The requirement for support from the seconder?
It was fine, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
Okay, so now we've got another motion on the floor, which is the recommendation is being seconded by Councillor Hong. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Councillor Fuller.
I'm just glad we got that all straight because I wasn't at the meeting where it was approved, so I'm glad to know I approved it.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Well, I thought this should have been done by staff a long time ago. It's been in the works for 15 years, probably. Been first time in the books 15 years ago. We need to have a resumption plan for what each of our departments will do in the event of some of the disasters that may hit us. It helps with our infrastructure and that. I'm a bit disappointed that we just can't do it as an organization, and everybody should know the chaotic operations are basic operations and full operations. And I think every department should have a sheet of that in front of them of what they do, and that's what has to be put together. And then they have to practice it and train it so they know. So, for example, when our computers go down, I hope this will give us some manual forms that we can fill out and continue our business. I hope this will give us the ability to service the public when something goes wrong. And it's more than just operating the individual departments. It should relate to our emergency plan and risk management for all of our infrastructure, all of our critical facilities, and all of our critical parts. So I hope, and I wish it wouldn't cost us so much because I believe each department should have done this a long time ago. So I'm hesitant on voting for it even.
Thank you very much. Okay, no further speakers. I'm going to call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item. Community Services, early approval and project scope change for Brecon Boat Ramp, improvements, paddling dock extension, and purchase of 2 floats for 2 other parks. The purpose is to provide council with information regarding the opportunity to improve the Brecon Boat Ramp facility, early approval to purchase 2 other floats, and also the opportunity to construct a temporary floating platform at Swilana Lagoon for the Rogers Hometown Hockey event in 2017. And there is a delegation, and that is Mr. Fred Taylor. Mr. Taylor.
My name is Fred Taylor of Nanaimo. I sent an email to Mr. Harding asking what is the purpose of this item, and main part of it is to help address the capacity issues at Brecon Boat Ramp. I look at the main ramp of Brecon Boat Ramp. It's 3 lanes wide between the 2 main docks to accommodate, you might say, the launching or bringing in of 3 boats at a time. Now, this city, in its wisdom, entertained the construction of a seaplane base on our waterfront lot, right next door to Brecken Boat Ramp. And there is administration reports, reports from the city clerk, everything to do with the construction of this seaplane base on our waterfront lot, City of Nanaimo waterfront lot. And in the blue pages here, which was your administration reports of the day, there's plans, etc., of that seaplane base. And on the south side of the seaplane base, there is a holding dock for Brecken Boat Ramp. I've never seen it promoted yet or anything, but it's there for the purpose of Brecken Boat Ramp. When are we going to see it promoted to the public and used instead of private moorage? That's what it is in the agreement for them to locate there on our waterfront lot, is a holding dock all along the south side of their establishment there for Brecken Boat Ramp. And it's in the plans and everything presented to council, adopted by council of the day, etc. So instead of squandering $248,000, let's get our dock that's supposed to be in use there in use. Save $248,000. Come on. Let's get what we agree to and get in a promotion for somebody to occupy our waterfront lot in use and save money. $248,000.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp, do you have a question for delegation? No? Thank you. Councillor Bestwick, do you have a question for the delegation?
Going to be staff, or maybe that report was done when Mr. Roberts was the mayor, the blue pages. So my question is, there is an existing dock that we own on the south side?
It's been provided in the construction of that seaplane base for the purpose as a cell to the accept a seaplane base on our waterfront lot for that purpose.
Is it being used for any purpose today?
I've seen private boats tied up to it. That isn't a holding dock.
Thank you.
It's
thank
not
you.
even promoted. I would bet that it's been not even promoted or information provided to the fishing group or anything by our Parks and Rec department or anything, that it's been negotiated to have all that available for the use of Brecken Boat Ramp.
Thank you. Then who collects the money when these private boats are moored there? Who's getting the money? Who's collecting the money? Who's repairing it? Who's not repairing it? Who's putting a sign up, you can't use this? Who's doing all this?
They do.
They made the commitment to sell to get onto our waterfront lot. And we keep renewing agreements with them. That should be renewed in each agreement, that they got to maintain and keep that dock to be able to, how they got there to start with.
Okay, I'm going to ask Mr. Harding to help us out here. Can you help us out, Mr. Harding?
I can. I did email Mr. Taylor on Friday if he wanted to meet and talk about what his issues were. I thought it was about the extension of what we're proposing today. I'm unaware of this situation and what he's mentioning. I'd have to check into it's before my time, believe it or not. I'd have to look into exactly what the situations were in 86.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Hong, do you have any questions for the delegation?
I do. So, do you see that red line? It shows that it actually doesn't touch their docks.
So what? It was our property or our leasehold to begin with.
Yeah,
and
so
they
we
agreed to get into our leasehold to provide a dock as a holding dock for the Brecken Boat Ramp. make them live to the lease, to the agreement, or get off our waterfront lot. Pretty simple.
Yeah.
Same as the one next door to you could provide for the boaters, etc., the paddlers that are looking for a place. They haven't lived up to millions of dollars to an improvement. They ask for a 30-year lease to be able to raise the money and make it a mortgage over a long period of time. Have they done it? No, it's still an eyesore, in my opinion. So it's time the city acted on these waterfront properties.
Thank you.
So I wonder if I could, Mr. Taylor, I understood that the land on Zorkin Avenue, on which Sea Air Seaplanes, if that's who you're referring to, that the land on which they occupy is actually considered to be the bottom of the harbor of Nanaimo Harbor, and they lease that property from the the province of British Columbia.
We had control over it. I believe we still have, and I was talking to the land department the other day, and they apparently have, in 2010 renewed the lease, so that you must be maintaining that water lot and subleasing it to Sea Air. But my point is, regardless of who owns it, there's these agreements that were promoted by the city administrator, the city clerk, everybody, to the public, to let them in on our waterfront lot. So live up to it, boys.
Thank you. I think your contention may be news to Sea Air.
No, well, that's their problem. It was McCully Aviation is there, and they've taken over since McCully Aviation.
Thank you. Okay, so the next, we have recommendations
Move
on.
receipt of the delegation.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Hong. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We're finished, sir. Thank you. Staff recommendation on page 56. Is there someone wishing to move the staff recommendation? Moved by Councillor Bestwick. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Hong. And discussion. Councillor Kev?
Yes, please. I appreciate the fact we're fixing the boat ramp and the use of these docks for a number of events in Nanaimo. I think it'll be a good one. I'm just wondering how we determine the amount spent, because I see the Diver Lake Park and the Collery Dam. They're both about, is it both $1,200 or $12,000 each? Yeah, I guess for me, we've asked a long time for Collery Dam Park to get some improvements, and I know they're working away on it. What are the improvements that are so equal to the two that they're exactly the same price? Can you tell me? There's no pictures or anything in the report other than the type of product recommended for the wharf.
Right. So we did an estimate based on the improvement plan for the Collery, for example, coming back, which the community wanted. I'll ask Mr. Group to give you the exact dimensions. And it's similar for divers. With the access issue that came to council earlier this year, we agreed to put a new access wharf in for launching of boats at Diver Lake. But Mr. Group.
Yeah, the platforms were 8 feet by 20 feet. So the two platforms are the same for both locations.
Yeah, just that to me, I mean, I'll say 10,000 people go to Collery Dam Park and 10 people go to Diver Lake, and we're spending the exact same money and doing the exact same stuff. And Collery Dam has taken a beating over the last years, and I thought we were going to spend more money on it, but yeah, it's okay.
Councillor Hong.
Thank you. A couple of questions. First one, can we not install these docks until after Canada 150 and July 1st so we can actually use these docks as a floating stage? Is that possible?
An idea I didn't think of. You thought of that. I think it was great. The park has over 180 special events. It's something that we've been wanting to try for years. Is different groups wanted to try a floating floating docks either for stages or other activities. So that would give an opportunity not only for this event, Canon 150, but possibly some other events, Dragon Boat, other groups that would want to try and do it. Once the event season is over, they would go then to their respective locations.
Great. Thank you. And then follow up on that, I think Brecon is due for an upgrade, and an extension is great because it does get busy. Can we increase parking revenues there to try to recover some of these costs that we get from reserves, I guess, in the future? Is that something that we're going to have to look at?
Worship, Council Hong, again, yeah, the overall fees and charges review, now the core services is done, we held that off. We are working with, finance is actually working on our overall city review of fees and charges, which that will include those types of amenities.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Mr. Harding, I support these recommendations. I just wanted to be clear, though, on the floating platform for Swilana. My understanding from the report is that it will be able to be moved and used at other locations for other events.
Your Worship, through Councillor Thorpe, we would leave it there for this year for all events. Then once the event season's over, it would go to the respective locations, Colliery, Diver, and Brecon Boat Ramp.
Right, that's great, thank you.
Yeah, if it works, we'd come back to council with possibly a permanent or a seasonal one at McPhail for events. This gives us a great season to try it out.
Thank you. I wonder if I could ask a question, and that is, Councillor Hong, you talked about floats for a stage. Would that be in Swilana?
Yeah, that's what these are going to be used for.
Okay.
Until we move them to docks.
Right, great, thank you. Okay. So there's a motion on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next one, outdoor rink, ice rink, hometown hockey legacy opportunity. And the purpose is to review and approve hometown hockey legacy opportunities through an outdoor skating rink for the event and consideration for a seasonal rink in the community. There's one delegation, Mr. John Dacombe.
John Combe, I live in Brecon Hill. Actually, we bought Councillor Hong's old childhood home just up from the Brecon Boat Ramp. And so I just moved to Nanaimo about 6 months ago. After 18 years back east, I was living mostly in Ottawa. And I worked right across the street from an outdoor ice rink that the city of Ottawa put in because the Rideau Canal, because of global warming, wasn't frozen well enough half the time. So I got pretty familiar with that outdoor ice rink. I used to walk by it every day. It got almost no traffic. I never spoke to a tourist that ever used it. I've done a lot of skating. I used to commute to work on the canal, 14 kilometers every day when the conditions were good. And I went and tried that thing.
Sir, I wonder if I can get you, we've been having some issues with our microphones, and if I can get you to speak directly and get us close.
Absolutely. Is that
there
better?
You go. That's better. Thank you.
So I went and tried that outdoor ice rink to see what it's like. It was across from my office. And it's kind of like skating in an indoor ice rink. You're going around in circles, except there's no roof over your head. So I know this is part of the Rogers hometown hockey, and you want to attract tourists. I see that in the briefing note from your staff, you say that it will be a, quote, celebration of everything West Coast, unquote. I can assure you, as somebody who's lived all over Canada, nobody thinks the West Coast of BC and outdoor ice skating. People move here specifically to get away from places where you skate outdoors. People visit here specifically to get away from that. If you can get 100% private funding for something like this, I say go for it. But don't allocate the cash hoping you'll get private funding. Leave it for the private sector like has been done in places like Victoria. The other thing that Ottawa had beside an outdoor skating rink was property taxes that tripled in 15 years. Now, I've only been in the city 6 months, but some of the fiscal decisions I have seen have worry me that this city is going down that same path of bad fiscal management. You're considering spending $200,000 on a temporary outdoor ice rink that will provide no long-term benefit to the city. And yet, I'll give you a couple examples. I've been spending a lot of time up at the recycling center on Kenworth Road. Last week, a little old lady got off the bus, the 40 bus, with her little bag of glass bottles and walked up the hill to return her glass bottles. Now, Victoria recycles glass. Vancouver recycles glass, but the city is incapable fiscally of recycling glass, so that senior citizens have to take the bus with their glass because they have one bag of garbage. Plus, it's environmentally unfriendly to put your glass in the garbage. You know, when I moved here in June, there was a pothole at Island in Northfield, Island Highway in Northfield. I keep patching it. It's still a pothole. I take my dogs to Colliery Dam all the time. Wacasia Island, Nanaimo Lakes Road above Wacasia, covered in potholes. So if you're spending $200,000 on temporary shiny things like outdoor ice rinks when you can't fulfill core services for your citizens, that's fiscally imprudent. These are the hard-earned tax dollars of the citizens of Nanaimo. And $200,000 is a lot of money. Your average income here is $48,000. $200K is a lot of money. So I would suggest that fiscally imprudent things like this are taken off the table and you fulfill core services. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick, do you have a question for the delegation?
Questions, comments? Thanks for moving to Nanaimo.
Thanks.
We did hold our taxes down last year, I think for the first time, to approximately 1% or less, which was truly admirable of this council to undertake that initiative to try to get there, which really came about as a result of our core services review that you may or may not know, just arriving when you did, that took us almost 12 years or 2 decades to get to a core services review to identify some of the places where we could become more fiscally prudent with those core things that you make reference to. The temporary turnkey sheet of ice is as a result of the hometown hockey event and living in Ottawa as long as you did, I'm sure. Well, you got a champion there now with the Red Blacks. So we have an opportunity to create a festival-like event for a couple of weeks outdoors, and then that piece of equipment will not turn into a dust piece. It will, in fact, be that legacy piece that we can program in other places in our city. For example, Harewood, you mentioned Colliery. So Harewood, we're building a brand new outdoor stadium or arena, if you will, that this particular matting could be put in there for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, December the 1st through January the 15th, every year for the next 20 years, 10 years, 15 years. It would allow us to do our Winter Wonderland instead of indoors at Frank Crane Arena, our largest spectator seating venue in the city of Nanaimo that occupies a Winter Wonderland with nobody in the seats. During a period of time in hockey season, as you would be able to appreciate being a skater, when hockey tournaments typically take place that put people in the city to go and stay in hotels and otherwise at hockey tournaments that I believe that we're not taking full advantage of because we have the Winter Wonderland indoors. We can still put it indoors at the Harewood complex that will be open-ended and open sides with a rooftop on it. When you speak to nobody using them, the one in downtown Vancouver is popular. The one at Butchart Gardens is extremely popular. The one at Cypress Mountain is extremely popular. The one in Vernon at Big White is extremely popular. In Kamloops, just outside of Kamloops at the Nancy Green Resort, they're building a full-size outdoor sheet of ice, 200 by 85, NHL size, as we speak. Is it the same as skating the Rideau? Not even close. Not even close. Is it something that people in this part of Vancouver Island don't get a chance to experience, outdoor skating? They don't get a chance to experience it. So I'm hoping that as the chair of the local organizing committee for the hometown hockey, there's rental opportunities in here also that are within the scope, lesser money that we could rent and so on. I appreciate what you're saying. And I could also say that if we dissected absolutely every dollar that we spend down to comparing to the NRE potholes and some elderly person having to get on a bus to go there, that's unfortunate, obviously. Would I like to see more money spent on busking in downtown on our waterfront in the summertime? Yep. There's all kinds of places where I think that we can spend money to make our city have some pride, to be able to say that we can do this, we can do these things, and we need to prove to a lot of people that we can do something really important to this hometown hockey event. If it doesn't happen, if there's no outdoor skating rink, and the whole intent too is now, if this council approves it, to go out and try to find private support. You can't go out and try to find it before we approve it and or adopt it here. It's kind of backwards, but it is what it is. If it doesn't materialize, it doesn't materialize. And I appreciate your comments.
If I could just respond to responses. I think that list of outdoor skating rinks you mentioned, are those all private sector funded? Like they're Butchart Gardens, Empress, Nancy Green, those are all private sector funded, which is great. Leave that to the private sector.
Kamloops is not, no.
Okay.
It's municipally funded.
But, budgeting is about picking and choosing, and my argument is you have to pick the basics before you add great frills, but it's a frill. And you need to spend it on the basics first for your citizens, for your residents.
Thank you, sir. I see no further questions.
Thank you.
Motion to receive the delegation. Moved by Councillor Kipp, seconded by Councillor Brennan. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. All right, there's a staff recommendation on page 62 to allocate, to direct, and to direct. Council, do we have a mover for the motion? Councillor Bestwick.
I have a question for staff, please. Mr. Harding, contained in here is the allocation of $200,000 toward the install of a temporary sheet of ice at Swayalana before and during and after the hometown hockey event. There is options.
There is.
Would you care to provide options in the event that the staff recommendation is not successful?
Right. Also, the recommendation I have right now in front of you is for $200,000, which will allow us to do the rink plus buy the mat that we can use for future years. So that's a recommendation that we can then move it around and put it in different locations. It is something that's been talked about for a number of years. We'd be the only one north of the Malahat that had this. It's just we feel that this gives us an opportunity to give us a good test, so then we can program it for other seasonal times of the year in future years. Does that answer your question, Councillor Bismarck?
Yes, and I would just like you, if you would, because you and I have had conversations about this topic for months. And I just need to ask you, how long have you been the Director of Parks and Recreation?
It's 9 years now.
So a decade. And could you please just, for those that are in the audience and those that are watching, would you please tell me where you believe this would rank as a priority for you as a Director of Parks and Recreation for the City of Nanaimo?
I believe this one is an important one to try, where we can also work with other sponsors. Like I mentioned, there's a number of groups that wanted to try to do this. We think this is something we can try. It also was, as you mentioned, with very successful Winter Wonderland, with the covered space that we have next year, it allows us to do other programming. And so I believe this is a I'm not sure where I'd rank it as a priority. There's many, many priorities, but it's definitely one that I believe we should try as a community. There'd be a combination.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
I'm not the sharpest tack in the drawer, so it's $200,000 for a temporary one, but we keep the mat.
That's correct.
Right. But we could this report also says we could purchase one that would cost us about $565,000.
Yeah, that would include the chiller and the other the generator and other aspects that go along with keeping it. So we're saying right now, let's try this out, see how it works, and then we believe we could, based on which I think is going to be successful, based on the success of it, come back to you in other locations. We'd like to see us to do it seasonally.
So I guess what I need explained to me is the $200,000 includes $55,000, I guess, for the mat.
That's correct.
And the rest of it includes what, renting a chiller and all of those things?
There's a number of aspects of putting up a temporary rink. So there would be the renting of the chiller, which is expensive, the generator, staff time, other contractors' time of setting up and monitoring it.
It makes it a very difficult, I mean, if one wanted to do this, it makes it a difficult thing to answer, because the cost of the temporary one is so high, and the only thing that you keep from it is the mat. Mm. The rest of it is money spent. It's gone, right?
Correct.
If you went with with purchasing it, then money spent is for an asset that we keep here.
Right. You would be buying the chiller, which is the most expensive part of it.
Yeah.
Which we would come back, depending on how successful in the community, how the community utilized it, which we believe they'll utilize it quite well. We could come back to council with buying those other components.
With the mayor's indulgence, one more question. I sent a message through the CAO to you about
Yes.
the usage rates of other rinks around the
Mm-hmm.
province, outdoor rinks. And the reason I did was because I happened to actually just walk past the outdoor rink in downtown Vancouver by the old law courts. There wasn't one person there, but there was a group of people, young people, who were practicing dancing there. So the choice in that instance was recreation, but not the ice. So I just wondered what the usage numbers were for other cities.
Yeah, so the type of rinks we're proposing, it's a programmed rink, so it's something that we're there and we're programming for a period of time. So the ones we're comparing to would be the similar one that's at Bouchard Gardens. So they wouldn't give us the numbers, but their operating season is December 1st to January 6th, with 40-minute sessions on each of the rinks. So we know that generates a lot. The next one would be the one that was at Fairmont Empress, and that was a longer, they had it for a longer period of time, November 20th to January 18th, and they ran from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. They had about 20,562 paid participants on that one. The one before that would be the downtown Victoria BIA. It was a smaller rink, a smaller. They had 20. They were open for 29 days, and they had just over 5,000 people utilize that rink.
One question on those stats. Did the usage cluster around events like Boxing Day, events, Santa Claus coming to town? So,
my assumption would be yes. I didn't get a chance to do that much detail on that component, but the assumption would be yes as events. Similar to what ours would be, we would do, as Councillor Bestwick mentioned, our Winter Wonderland, which would be that period of time, and then around the seasonal component.
the Winter Wonderland at, I guess, Frank Crane has not been particularly successful, did you say? Empty seats? Or
Pardon me?
say that the one at Frank Crane had not been successful, that there were empty seats?
No, it's very successful. The issue is that the seats are empty, of course, because everyone's on the ice. But the idea was we do take it away from other potential users to put that on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. I guess this probably question is kind of stupid, but can we use this for Canada 150 on July 1st?
Yes, I would say no. It would be very slushy.
Thank you. Councillor Yoakum.
Thank you. Hearing this conversation, and everyone's entitled to their view, and we all can think of things that we see empty or money not being well spent in each of our own individual views. I started this term off where we spent $8 million plus. Some of us have fight against spending on Colliery Dam, and some people were hell-bent on spending as much as we can on Colliery Dam. Just give an example of $8 million plus. So why I'm saying that is I believe this is positive spending, so I have no problem making the motion. We deserve a positive family activity that can happen yearly in this city. I never skated much. I never skated anywhere else, but I just think it'd be an exciting family thing, bringing my daughter and my son. I believe many people in Nanaimo, many of my friends and peers in my age group are excited about this. And it's a positive, a place to bring family together and have a positive experience in this city. There hasn't been very much positive in this council. I don't think I have to tell anyone that. So we can definitely think this would be a positive thing. We can think of every reason in the world why not to do it, but I can think of more reasons why to do it. Health, family, gathering, like a gathering place. So I have no problem. I wasn't sure where Councillor Brennan was going, if she was suggesting the 2,000 or if we should purchase the whole meal deal. So I wasn't sure where you're going with that, but nevertheless, the only option I do see here is, so I have no problem making the motion to the recommendation that council allocate $200,000 to install a temporary ice rink at McPhail Sutton Park for up to 2 weeks during the Hometown Hockey Festival, which includes the purchase of the 40 by 80 removable ice mat. Direct staff to work on sponsorship options for a temporary rink, and direct staff, based on success of the other communities, to develop locations and cost options of installing a permanent seasonal outdoor rink and report back. I have no problem making that motion for the simple fact we can turn this into a positive opportunity year after year, takes the pressure off Frank Crane Arena where you do other programming, hockey tournaments and whatnot, and it's an exciting, positive thing, in my view, for the city of Nanaimo. So therefore, I'm making the motion. Thank you.
Seconded by Councillor Fuller. Discussion. Councillor Fuller, you're on the list as well.
Yeah. I am. I like the idea of this. The hometown hockey is going to bring us together as a community. This is the icing on the cake. It just came to me. I know, blah, blah, blah. But I remember as a kid going to school in Toronto and skating out in front of City Hall. They do that every year. It's always busy. Ottawa, maybe not so busy because they like the Rideau Canal. They don't have that in Toronto. But they do have the ice outside of City Hall. From Toronto, we moved to the Maritimes. Every community had outdoor rinks. And the kids just loved them. I actually skated back then. I haven't skated since I left the Maritimes. And I may not skate on this. But I can see the opportunity for kids in this part of the country to actually skate outside and to get that enjoyment that most of the country gets because they do get winter. And, you know, as with global warming, they may soon lose those opportunities, but we have the opportunity to do this at least this once, see how it goes, and if it goes well, and I strongly suspect it will, go to the permanent one. So I'm going to support this. It's $200,000. Yes, that would fill a heck of a lot of potholes. $8 million would have built a lot of roads.
Thank you. I see no further speakers, but I would like to speak to it, and that is that I wish that we had had a budget. I wish we'd committed to a budget prior to committing to Rogers Hometown Hockey. We didn't have a budget, so here we sit now at $325,000 if we approve this tonight. I'd love to skate outside in Nanaimo. I'd love to skate at Maffeo Sutton Park. I'd even like more to have a permanent skating rink down on top of Pioneer Plaza, as was suggested a few years ago. I can't think of a more beautiful place than down there. So we're spending $200,000 tonight. We will be looking at, we'll get $57,000 worth of hard material in the way of the mat. And we get to use it for 2 weeks on top of $125,000. Now, if the budget had come in where somebody said, okay, well, maybe what we can do is we can forget the fireworks and perhaps instead of completely funding the barbecue, the salmon barbecue, that we charge $10 a plate for it. And we get the sponsorship for the balance. If that had come, that I might have been able to support it. I would love to be able to skate outside, but I think that a total of $325,000 for Rogers Hometown Hockey is too much. Anyway, that's just my opinion. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Well, when we had the opportunity to accept the Rogers Hometown Hockey that will probably deliver the city of Nanaimo the most exposure that it's ever received across the country, and an event that should probably attract as many people downtown for multiple days as the flyover. And the fact that we really have made very little investments in our own festivals, if any, frankly. The Dragon Boat is all volunteer. The Silly Boat is all volunteer. The activities and entertainment that is brought to Nanaimo is brought typically by somebody else. We don't invest in ourselves. This event coming in here will, if nobody's watched on Sunday afternoons, the Hometown Hockey Experience and event, you should. And you will have an opportunity to see what the investment in yourself can do for your city and for your pride and for your engagement, and to be able to say that we did something that nobody else has done. But the fact of the matter is there was really no opportunity for us to create a budget. We had to create the committees. We had to create the festival that would surround this event. We certainly can, and we've talked about this at our committee with the school board and VIU and the port and SFN and everybody else. We can sit back and do absolutely nothing. We can be the circus that comes to North Town Center and do absolutely nothing and allow them to come in and do absolutely everything. And our benefit at the end of the day is probably going to be about, and they estimate to be somewhere between $700,000 and $1 million in advertising that we could not otherwise do for our own city. We're bringing First Nations. The budget that you received, that you're making reference to, about fireworks and a dinner is something that is absolutely critical to ensuring that this event is successful, that it is engaging, that we do have VIU on board, that we do go to the three totems, that we do go to the gathering place, that we do have a day in the life of Nanaimo for Tara Sloan, that the entire country is going to go. When we go to British Columbia, when we're talking about going to Vancouver, we're going to skip over to Nanaimo. And there is a lot of buy-in from private that we haven't indicated or identified yet, that we will have the opportunity to identify in the next 90 days leading into this. So the opportunities that we have, the chance that we had to present a budget, well, we didn't have a chance to present it. You take it or you don't take it. You run with it and you make it the absolute best that you can. And this is going to be our festival of a lifetime. And the legacy that's going to be left behind is no different with the staging that Jerry's talking about. The first time ever in the Swilana Lagoon to be able to have entertainment inside there. We might want to do it again. And I know Richard downplayed how important the legacy piece of an outdoor skating surface for this city could be for the next 10 plus years, to build something really important and special and really cool and fun. Or we can say, hey, honey, let's pack up the kids and go down to Vancouver Island Conference Center this weekend. Oh, right, we don't do that. So, hey, honey, let's pack up the kids, let's bundle up the kids, let's go downtown and skate at Swilana, have a hot chocolate, and have a family experience at Christmas that this city has never had before, or just after Christmas. And then let's do it next year at Christmas time. And let's make that event bigger than Butch Art Gardens. And let's make that event our event that we can put our name on the map. When the Ladysmith Light Up Parade started, I'll bet there was people out there saying, you're going to what? You're going to spend city money and city time and buying light bulbs and putting them in trees? Well, it's the best thing that Ladysmith does. And it's the most important thing that Ladysmith does for their community pride. And hopefully, this community is going to find some pride in some legacy piece that we can say, we're the only city on Vancouver Island that has an outdoor skating rink for a month at Christmas time, December 15th to January the 15th. Let's go shopping in Nanaimo, honey. Let's pack up the kids. Let's go skating in Nanaimo outdoors. It's really cool. It's really fun. It's really funky. Great music. We'll have a blast. And then we're going to go shopping. We're going to go out for dinner. Then we're going home. No, we wouldn't want to do that. Let's not do that.
Councillor Brennan.
Well, I'm prepared to support this. But I have to say that I think it's a very good lesson in how not to plan an event. I think it's a lesson that tells us that we needed to be more prepared. I think that we had too little time, and so we are piecemealing together a bit of a budget. Some of it sounds like it's on a hope and a prayer. I hope it's true. I hope that we do get the buy-in and that we get lots of people out and lots of families out. So it's a noble experiment, but I think it's something that we could have got involved in earlier. And if the answer to that is, well, they just did a flyby offer and it's take it or leave it now, or we're going to Prince Port Hardy, we could have thought about that a little bit. But we're here now. I think, my family would have fun with it. But I do think that spending $200,000 and in the end you have a $55,000 mat, maybe not the best of planning, not the best of budgeting. But I will support it.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
There's lots of room on our committee. If anybody wants to join our committee, we've got a meeting tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. So I welcome everybody to our committee meeting tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. right here in the museum downstairs. So please come, please join us, please bring your great ideas and suggestions on how we can raise the money to offset some of the expenses, because that's a high priority for us with our committee that is working on fundraising and sponsorship. And I think Richard wanted to respond.
Yes, Your Worship. I know that to the rest of the council and to the public, it looks like we're running here. I know over the years, though, I've been here. There's certain times where we've taken when opportunities come forward, we're able to move forward. And just 1 second, if I go back in time when council approved us to go and do a trail plan. We didn't know where we'd ever get the opportunities to do a trail plan. We had the trail plan done, then suddenly a parkway was developed, and suddenly we were able to take advantage of trails there and then other things. This is one we thought, and I'll have to take the part of the issue here. We had some of these things we've always wanted to try. This event gives us that opportunity to try it. We expect to have 8,000 to 12,000 a day, each day for hometown hockey at Maffeo. It gives us a real opportunity to try a number of things that we don't typically put on events. Like we said, we usually work with the community to put on events. This is a chance for us to work with the community again, but also us to lead and try some things. We hope when we try these, it'll show to expand again. Maffeo was never designed initially to be a special event location. We then, over the years, have kept improving it because the public wanted it to be a special event location. Now we can have special events down there 365 days a year because of investments we put in a number of years ago. This is another one that gives us that chance to try it. So it's definitely we have the hometown hockey event coming, but it gives us this opportunity to try some things we've been wanting to try for a number of years. Just haven't had the opportunity to try it.
Thank you very much. There is another speaker, two more speakers, but we need to put forward a motion to go beyond the hour of 11 o'clock, and I would ask Council, do you want to go to a prescribed time, or do you wish to complete any business items? Ms. Armstrong.
You can complete the motion that's on the floor before.
No, I understand that.
Yes.
I understand that. To complete the motion before we have the vote?
To complete the motion before you're looking for a motion to extend past.
Okay,
curfew?
great. Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. I'll make this quick. I think opportunities like this don't come along very often, and we weren't prepared. I think this committee is going to show us that if another opportunity comes forward like this, which I hope, that we're going to be better prepared. The first one's always the hardest. And I think we're going to get better the more that we do this. I would love to see a first night. I remember when A-Channel did the shows downtown. We have this, we can tie all that in. We talk about opportunities that we've missed. We missed Slide the City. That would have been great. Other people are doing it, and they're having great success with it. And I'm hoping that we can still get them back, because these are opportunities that we missed, and I don't want to miss any more opportunities. I think the city deserves some fun. Thank you.
Councillor Pratt.
Gosh, I've been going back and forth on this one all night long. I really have. Even this afternoon when I was reading it, I wasn't sure whether I was going to be in favor of it or not. I've listened very carefully to what everybody said. I like the idea of it being a legacy piece. I like the idea of checking it out to see if this is something that we can do in the future. But honestly, I see that we could build on this one. I see that this is something that we could turn into a winter wonderland every year, that we could do something really amazing in the city that brings people from all over the island to want to come and experience it over a period of time in the winter. And I used to be able to skate on the ponds in the winter here, and I'd love to be able to skate outside again. So although I have waffled back and forth, I think I will support it.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be quick, but I haven't spoken on this, and I will support this. I understand some of the concerns that have been raised, but I have to agree. I think this is an opportunity. I think it's an exciting chance to experiment, and something that Mr. Harding said twigged with me, and that is the fact that we're looking in the longer term about a Maffeo-Sutton master plan. It's more and more becoming an event center for our city, and I think this ties in with some opportunities for that down the road. So I will support this, yes.
Councillor Kipp.
I'd love to see this. Be nice to be set out right out front here on the street. Christmas all decorated downtown. Next year somewhere else in town. I think it is an opportunity for us, and I think that is sometimes the things you're prepared for don't work out as good as the things you're not prepared for, and I think we got to make this work because it will sell our community. We will get thousands and thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of people watch hometown hockey, and I think it is a good one, and I think it's a positive step. Sounds like a big investment. Two more things from here. We're spending $357 extra on soil at a dirty soil site, so we got to think about what we do.
Thank you. Okay, no further speakers. Going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Show Mayor McKay opposed. Okay, we need a motion to go past 11. Councillor Kipp. Seconder. Is there a seconder?
Motion to adjourn.
Fails on a second. No seconder. Meeting's adjourned.